Chapter 2064. Oh my god, this is the prelude to becoming a god. Thousands of great Daoists in the nine heavens god realm are resonating with his Daoist heart. Someone sensed the mystery and realized what kind of power this was. He couldn't help but exclaim, "How is this possible? How many times has the prelude to becoming a god sounded since ancient times?" This song isn't completely related to cultivation. It's a reflection of one's state of mind, understanding of Taoism and understanding of the world of mortals. Legend has it that the prelude to becoming a god is only the beginning. If the real divine song is derived, one can obtain power close to that of a god. Everyone was shocked. They didn't expect Zhou Xian to be so talented that he could comprehend the prelude to becoming a god. Although it had nothing to do with cultivation and was only a sublimation of one's state of mind, the greatest potential of a cultivator was in his heart. One day he might be able to illuminate the world. "Old man, how dare you act tough in front of me? Do you want to die?" At this moment, Zhou Xian suddenly stood up and slapped down with his palm. It was as if Mount Tai was crashing down. You. According to Xia Zhangying's deduction, it would take some time for Zhou Xian to reach the soul formation stage. She didn't expect Zhou Xian to suddenly break through and attack her. She was caught off guard and was dumbfounded. Under Zhou Xian's palm, Xia Zhangying couldn't resist at all. Her legs gave out and she fell to the ground like a toad. The palm continued to press down. Playing. The thick demonic soil sank 5 kilometers, forming a giant palm-shaped well with a radius of 3 kilometers. At the bottom of the well was Xia Zhangying, who was almost crushed. Her body was covered in blood, her bones were broken and her internal organs were almost exposed. This time everyone was shocked. "Damn, how is this possible? That's Xia Zhangying." Everyone was dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. This palm almost smashed the peerless genius Xia Zhangying, who was considered the most powerful saint on this continent, into meat paste. He broke through. Cultivator Zhang broke through. The cultivators of the Eastern Empire were silent at first, then burst into cheers. Mou Lin Yang and the others all revealed surprised and shocked expressions. Zhou Xian's breakthrough was too fast, and once he made a move he was too powerful. Even Xia Zhangying had been suppressed by a single palm. This was an absolute power that could crush all of the return to void stage saints. Fellow Daoist. Saint Qianma looked over excitedly and revealed a gratified expression. At this time Zhou Xian's face was as chiseled as a knife, and he was as perfect as a true god. His white robe fluttered in the wind and he was otherworldly. He was like a true god who looked down on the myriad worlds with disdain. For a moment, everyone felt a severe mental pressure, as if they were being stared at by a primordial ferocious beast, and they felt uncomfortable all over. Seeing how powerful Zhou Xian was, Lian Huahuan's beautiful eyes glowed with extraordinary splendor. It was as if she had seen a rare treasure, an idol that fans admired. Compared to Zhou Xian, the successors of the sacred grounds and divine sects in Saint Origin World were not even worth mentioning. He was only at the soul formation stage, but he could defeat the veteran void return saints and suppress the geniuses of the previous generation. How heaven-defying was this? It was hard to find one in 100,000 years. As a peerless genius and the daughter of a sacred grounds divine sect, Lian Huahun was very arrogant and no one was worthy of her attention. But now she couldn't help but be very attracted to Zhou Xian, and she couldn't help but feel jealous of Huang Linger. Huang Linger was a girl who came from a poor and desolate planet. How could she be worthy of such a genius? Only she could be. Thinking about this, she stepped forward and bowed with a smile. "Congratulations on successfully breaking through to the soul formation stage, fellow Daoist. You can be called a mighty figure now." Her waist was slender, her chest was high, and her temperament was ethereal. She was graceful just like an immortal. Zhou Xian ignored her. His eyes were indifferent, as if he was hanging high up in the sky without a trace of emotion. Lian Huahun didn't feel offended. She smiled faintly with her beautiful eyes and was about to chat with Zhou Xian. Suddenly, there was a loud rumble. Xia Zhangying shot out of the deep pit and the wounds on her body healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. She pointed at Zhou Xian and shouted, "You're just a newly ascended soul formation cultivator. How dare you hurt me? I once dominated the 9 celestial sects." The genius of the previous generation was enraged. He didn't use his full strength just now. It was just a casual attack, thinking that it would be enough to kill Zhang Tian. However, Zhang Tian suddenly succeeded in breaking through and attacked him head-on, truly catching him off guard. To this overlord who had once dominated an era and was called a Dao ancestor on this continent, it was a great humiliation. At this moment, everyone realized that Xia Zhangying didn't use her full strength just now. Lian Huahan was so frightened that her face turned cold, but she still gritted her teeth and mustered her courage. Thank you, Senior. Fellow Daoist Jiang has a good relationship with the Luoying sect. Please give us some face and don't attack him anymore. She was natural and graceful. Every frown and smile was charming. After all, she was born in a good family. Seeing this, Saint Qianma sighed softly. The icing on the cake was far better than providing timely help. Zhang Tian had already survived the crisis and climbed to a height that even you had to look up to. If he came over again, would he care about you? The current Zhang Tian might not have the strength to suppress Xia Zhangying, but at least he had the strength to escape unscathed. Yes. Let's give the Luoying sect some face. Since he's a genius, we shouldn't kill him. We're not bad people. The Void Returned Saint said coldly. Junior thanks you. Lian Huahuan's face was full of joy as if she had done a great service. Xia Zhangying also looked hesitant because she was also unsure of Zhang Tian's strength. Zhang Tian's attack just now was indeed evil. He also realized that Zhang Tian's soul formation realm cultivation was extremely high and he might not be able to suppress him. However, he was unwilling to retreat just like that. Firstly, he was defeated by a junior and his reputation would be damaged. Secondly, he also needed the Six Paths Lotus Tree. After pondering for a while, Xia Zhangying said coldly with hatred in her eyes, "The old man can give you face and not kill him, but he has to bow down to me and admit his mistake and share his immortal fate with me." Just as Saint Qianma had guessed, Zhang Tian did not look at Lian Huahan. Instead he said coldly, "He, you won't kill me anymore. Is this the end of the grudge? Old bastards, listen up. I'm going to break your old coffins. Anyone who tried to attack me just now will self-destruct their inner world. I won't destroy your sects and families." Zhang Tian's words were extremely domineering. Everyone present was shocked, unable to believe what they were seeing. Any Void Returned Saints who tried to sneak attack him just now would die. Suicide? Zhang Tian just did not want to implicate them. This sentence was extremely arrogant and looked down on the world. This person is really domineering. He wants to challenge the 13 saints alone? He just reached the soul formation realm. How strong is his soul formation realm cultivation? Everyone could not help but exclaim in their hearts. Lian Huahuan's face was slightly red with embarrassment. She did not expect Zhang Tian to not give her face and attack the Void Returned Saints. Chapter 2065. Fellow Cultivator, you've just broken through and your foundation is not stable yet. You shouldn't make too many enemies. Saint Qianma's expression changed when she heard that and she tried to persuade him. Xia Zhangying was not the only saint on the other side. There were 13 of them and each of them was a veteran saint. Moreover, most of them were old monsters at the level of the living dead. To put it bluntly, their lifespan was almost up and they were not far from returning to the heavens. In order to obtain the immortal opportunity, they would not hesitate to kill Zhang Tian. Zhang Tian glanced at her. A trace of pity flashed across his eyes. He said coldly, "You're too weak." He said coldly, "Senior, if I had broken through a few seconds later, you might have been killed by these rascals. I will take revenge for this. Fellow Cultivator, why do you have to do this?" Lian Huahan had a glib tongue, and she took the moral high ground to persuade him. As the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than to keep it alive. You have such great talent and high aspirations. You should be broad-minded and make friends. Only then can you go far. The immortal opportunity has no owner, so it's normal for everyone to want a share of it. Just follow the will of the people and share the immortal opportunity of the Six Paths Lotus Tree with everyone. The demonic wave is coming, and all the saints present are the pillars of the continent. They need the protection of the immortal chi of the Six Paths Lotus Tree to resist the invasion and protect this world. Zhang Tian was so angry that he laughed and said coldly, "Why didn't you stop these old bastards when they were trying to kill me? Now, I want to take revenge, but you're stopping me and asking me to share their Six Paths Lotus Tree. What's the meaning of this? I'll tell you straight, the Six Paths Lotus Tree will not leak any immortal chi. No one can even take a leaf. Jiang Tian would naturally resist the demonic wave, and even subdue the devil's claws. However, devil qi was not something that could be cleared away in a day or two. The Six Paths Lotus Tree could remove the demonic qi and prevent humans, beasts, and demons from becoming demons again. Moreover, he had just used too much of the immortal qi of the Six Paths Lotus Tree. If these supreme saints took some more, he might die. Jiang Tian's eyes were sharp as he coldly shouted, "If you dare to say another word, I'll slaughter you as well." You. Lian Huahan was almost choked to death by Jiang Tian's words. She couldn't help but feel both ashamed and indignant, and her beautiful face flushed red. She gritted her teeth and her full chest heaved up and down in anger. "I advised you with good intentions, but in order to save your life, you treated my good intentions as ill intent. Good words are hard to persuade. I'll just let an egomaniac like you die." After all, Xia Zhongying had been to the Central Galaxy for training, so she knew many immortal techniques. No matter how good one's bone structure was, how talented one was, and how high one's grade was, one was still a divine transformation realm cultivator. The other party had more experience and more immortal arts than you and was more powerful than you. If you were to fight him seriously, you wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow. "Brat. How arrogant of you." Xia Zhongying's eyes were filled with hatred as she said coldly, "This time the old man is serious about killing you. Don't think that the old man is also an ordinary void return cultivator or a weakling saint. This time the old man will show you what a real void return cultivator who can control the Grand Tao is like." His voice was as cold as ice. Even if people heard it, their souls would be frozen and they couldn't help but tremble in fear. Plang. Xia Zhongying attacked fiercely. Her fingers and palms covered the sky and the earth, suppressing Jiang Tian. "Immortal Tao Law. Is this the Immortal Tao Law?" everyone exclaimed. With this palm strike, everyone was shocked to discover that the space within 100 meters around Jiang Tian's body was actually distorted. All kinds of Dharma laws and Grand Daoists lost their effectiveness. Then the space collapsed inch by inch. Even space didn't exist anymore. Boom. At this moment, the onlooking cultivators within a 100-mile radius all stepped back. Even Lian Huahan and Saint Qianmo retreated with fear on their faces. "Senior, what's the Immortal Tao Law?" a disciple asked curiously and in shock. "I heard that the 9 celestial sects are located right below the 9 heaven deity realm. There will be deity qi flowing and Immortal Tao laws falling." Saint Qianmo explained in shock. "These Immortal Tao laws are extremely solid and can destroy all Dharma laws and Grand Daoists in the mortal world. That's why it's so powerful. Even void return saints don't dare to fight it head-on." So Xia Zhongying isn't as weak as he said. He also encountered some opportunities in the 9 celestial sects. He collected some Immortal Tao laws and refined them into his body. Even if it only covers a 100-meter radius, it'll be a big problem for this cultivator. Lian Huahan couldn't hide the pain in her heart and sneered. "This kid is arrogant and doesn't listen to good advice. This time, even if he doesn't die, he'll be half dead." While everyone was talking, the Immortal Tao laws had already fallen rapidly, as if a negative vacuum had appeared. Gusts of wind blew in a 100-mile radius. Mountains and pieces of demonic soil flew up and rushed towards the space under his palms. They were compressed to 1,000th of their original size. The giant mountains were reduced to gravel and the giant peaks were reduced to gravel. It was a sacred realm that was no longer the Dharma laws and Grand Daoists of this world. It had been replaced by the Immortal Tao laws that Xia Zhongying had released. Everything was under his control. A few nascent soul itinerant cultivators didn't have the protection of the flying boat and were a bit slower. They were directly sucked in and disappeared. Break. Jiang Tian took a step forward and his black hair fluttered. An unparalleled energy spread out and he struck with his palm. "You're using your body to resist my Immortal Tao laws. You're hitting a rock with an egg." At this moment Xia Zhongying actually laughed. His Immortal Tao laws were extremely solid. It took him 500 years of hard work and a narrow escape to collect and refine them. Killing saints was like cutting grass, refining stars and shattering moons. How could his body resist it? Even if he was made of Grand Tao treasure metal, it wouldn't work. Even if Jiang Tian was an infant deity, it wouldn't work. Even a deity-grade soul formation cultivator would only be able to resist for a while and would be severely injured. At this moment many void return saints sneered and mocked. He's using his soul formation body to resist the immortal Tao laws of a returning cultivator saint. He's simply courting death. Arrogant, he doesn't know his limits. He wants to monopolize the immortal opportunity. A few others were eager to take a share of the loot. They were so excited that they rubbed their palms. I didn't expect him to die so soon. He's destined to be a shooting star that can only shine for a while. Lian Huahan also shook her head and chuckled as if she was gloating. She had overestimated this guy after all. Perhaps he had a good opportunity and was extremely talented. However, he was an itinerant cultivator after all and didn't come from a famous sect. His foundation was weak and his knowledge was naturally poor. Even Saint Qianma and Princess Mou frowned, thinking that Jiang Tian was too arrogant in this battle. On the other hand, Huang Linger was worried for Jiang Tian. Her little face was pale from nervousness. Playing. However, when Jiang Tian came into contact with the immortal Tao laws, the latter crumbled like tofu and dissipated quickly. Jiang Tian was like a god who had created the world. With a single step he seemed to be able to reach anywhere. Like a hot knife cutting through a block of cold jelly, he easily passed through the Saint domain, and arrived before Xie Zhongying. Bam! Jiang Tian lashed out with a sharp whip kick. There was nothing fancy about it and no dermic powers were released. It was just an ordinary martial art of the mortal world as it lashed towards Xie Zhongying. However, the whip leg slashed out like a heavenly blade, and it instantly broke through his protective immortal Tao laws that seemed like precious gold and glass, and it struck heavily onto his neck. Crack! His neck was bent to the extreme and let out a terrifying crisp sound. Then it broke and his head flew into the sky. Bright sage blood and broken bones that were like white jade scattered all over the sky. Jiang Tian stood proudly in the void with his hands behind his back. There was no fluctuation of dermic powers as if this was how it should be. His eyes were neither sad nor happy as he said indifferently, Daoist, can you withstand my physical attack? How strong was Jiang Tian now? Even he wasn't sure himself. He had become a divine-grade god and broken the shackles of the mortal world. His body was extremely strong and was equivalent to a young god in the immortal world. He could even beat up an ordinary immortal from the immortal world or an early-stage immortal-level reunion immortal from the immortal world. Moreover, Xie Zhongying was immortal after all. She had only picked up some immortal Tao laws from the 9 heavens immortal world from the 9 immortal sects. Chapter 2066. Xie Zhongying didn't have the time to answer Jiang Tian's question. The scene at this moment was very strange. Xie Zhongying's head flew in the sky while her body flew below. The two of them wanted to find each other and merge into one. However, as soon as he touched an invisible barrier, he was stunned. The two of them were like rats on fire, squeaking and squeaking. The heaven and earth in their bodies shook uneasily as if they were about to collapse. Power! Saint Qianma exclaimed. Daoist Zhang's physical attack formed a strange force field barrier. Is this the immortal power and divine power that's being transmitted? In the cultivation world, power was instantaneous. Only laws and Daoists could last forever. Jiang Tian's kick just now didn't have any laws, but it contained divine power. This divine power wasn't a law, but it was comparable to a Dao or even stronger. It could last forever and form a divine power barrier in the sky, separating Xie Zhongying's head and body. Therefore the two of them kept flying in the same direction trying to merge into one. But Jiang Tian's divine power barrier was too big. The head and body flew for a long time but still couldn't fly out of its range. Save Elder Xie. This kid is vicious. Let's work together and kill him. A return to Void Stage great sage wearing a monkey mask stepped out from the shadows as he yelled, "Let's go." That's right. If Elder Xie dies, we'll have one less helper. Another return to Void Stage saint revealed his true form. He wore a strange bird head mask and said in a cold voice, "This kid is evil. He might have become a demon. We have to kill him and get rid of the demon. For the righteous Tao." One after another the saints walked out and shouted. This scene was ridiculous. They were obviously selfish. Their cultivation arts and physiques weren't as good as Jiang Tian's, but they slandered Jiang Tian for becoming a demon. Poof! Jiang Tian glanced at them with a smile and suddenly used his dermic powers to tap the air. He controlled a divine-grade Dao, which was so powerful that it was like a god from the divine world attacking and destroying all the laws and Daos in the mortal world. Who could resist it? Xie Zhongying directly exploded in the air. The world in her body was destroyed by Jiang Tian's finger. Rumble. At that moment the destructive power was truly terrifying. It was as if a star had exploded. Surging shockwaves swept through the 9 heavens and 10 earths, destroying everything. The entire critical juncture canyon, which was hundreds of thousands of kilometers in radius, was shaking violently. This was the power of the explosion of the world in his body. It was like the explosion of a world, far surpassing the explosion of a star. As for the nuclear explosion, it was not even 1/10,000th of its power. Jiang Tian released his domain to protect the Eastern Empire's flying ship, Qianma Luing sect and the others. But the others were not so lucky. Whoosh, whoosh. Many large flying ships flew into the distance or dove into the abyss to avoid the shockwaves. However, he was still sent tumbling out and many of his Dao patterns were destroyed. Plang. Nearby, several small flying boats were directly torn apart. Dao artifacts were indestructible and could enter the interior of a star, but they were all melted into molten steel in an instant. As for the cultivators inside, not even a drop of slag was left. Jiang Tian, who was nearby, was not affected at all. His white robe was fluttering in the wind and there was no dust on it. He was like a god who had descended to the mortal world. Nothing could hurt him. It could be said that that area was completely wiped out by the explosion of Xie Zhangying's world. Only Jiang Tian and a dozen Void Return Saints were left. They stood still between heaven and earth. Who else? Jiang Tian glanced at the sages with a cold and disdainful gaze. For a moment there was a dead silence. There was complete silence. The Soul Formation Realm cultivators in the distance were all trembling in fear. Even the 13 Void Return Saints who wanted to besiege him were stunned. Jiang Tian had really killed a saint. This saint was not only a genius back then, but also a peerless Void Return cultivator. Besides, Xie Zhangying had also fought with the determination to die. She did not hold back at all. But still she was slaughtered by Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian had only just reached the Soul Formation Realm, but he already had such power. The situation did not look good. Let me deal with you. A Void Return Saint wearing a green robe and a bronze fox mask walked over. His hair was still black and his voice was clear and magnetic. Obviously he was one of those Void Return Saints who was injured, poisoned, or obsessed with cultivation and was about to die. He was still at the peak of his strength, unlike Xie Zhangying who was on the verge of death. But he had to fight to the death, which made him even more terrifying than Xie Zhangying. All right. Jiang Tian nodded with satisfaction. I'll use you as a whetstone to hone myself. He was full of arrogance and confidence. He was obviously treating this person as his opponent. Humph. The Void Return Saint with the bronze fox mask snorted. There was a flash of light on his body. Immediately, an ice-cold silver battle suit appeared and protected him firmly. The battle suit flashed with silver light and patterns of feathers appeared. Dao flowed and resonated with the Dao. This is a battle suit made from the Immortal Feather Great Dao treasure metal. Legend has it that it can only be found in places like the 9 Great Immortal sects. Saint Qianma was shocked. This battle suit was filled with immortal aura and intertwined with the laws of immortal aura. It was condensed and elegant, giving people a feeling that the Dao was natural and one with the heavens. She had mixed feelings. She was heartbroken. These Void Return Saints were supposed to be the pillars of this continent to resist the demonic wave. But they were blinded by greed and forgot everything. They only wanted to kill Jiang Tian and take the 6-path lotus tree to strengthen themselves. They wore masks because they knew that they were too selfish. They felt guilty and did not dare to show their true faces. Huang Linger and many others were also very worried for Jiang Tian. In order to kill Jiang Tian, the fox-masked great sage had already taken out a supreme treasure and put on his trump card battle suit. The great sage's fox mask only revealed a pair of cold eyes. They shone with divine light and were extremely frightening. The Immortal Feather Great Dao battle suit flowed with silver light and covered his entire body, becoming one with the Dao. He walked step by step towards Jiang Tian. With a wave of his hand he held up a purple-gold divine lamp. This divine lamp shot out rays of beautiful light. It shone brightly and seemed to fall from the heavens, making him look like a god. Saint Qianma took a closer look. There was no wick in the divine lamp. It was clearly a star that had been refined into a wick by supreme dermic powers. Its power was extremely terrifying. Without saying anything, the fox-masked great sage attacked. The purple gold divine lamp in his hand shot out a bright and sharp purple light. It pierced through the demonic qi and tore through the demonic laws. The light was bright and pierced towards Zhang Tian. Good. Interesting. Zhang Tian sighed softly and seemed to be quite satisfied. He waved his hands and casually cut off a space. He poured a divine-grade great Dao into it and formed a huge shield. This huge shield was as smooth as a mirror. There was nothing fancy about it, but it was absolutely smooth and had a simple beauty. Whoosh. In an instant the purple light shot out. It was as if all the light of a star had gathered into one beam. It was dazzling and brilliant. It could pierce through the 9 underworlds, pierce through mountains and rivers and even refine stars and shatter moons. Chapter 2067. Playing. Zhang Tian raised his giant shield, which crushed the void and collided with the dazzling purple light. Suddenly, the purple light burst out, sweeping and refracting. With a whoosh, a large flying ship thousands of miles away was pierced by the refracted light. The hole was very small at first, and then the red light quickly spread from the hole to the entire ship. Soon it melted and the molten steel flowed to the ground. Hundreds of cultivators died before they could even let out a scream. At this moment, everyone was stunned by Zhang Tian's strength. The shield that he condensed out of thin air had such a terrifying defensive power. It was as if a true god had descended to the mortal world. The fox-masked sage's eyes flashed with coldness and determination, and he raised his hand. Whoosh! The purple divine lamp flew out and fixed in the sky. It was so bright that it was like a purple sun hanging in the sky. Under the control of his mind. Boom! Boom! Thousands of purple lights poured down, and each of them was like a purple waterfall falling toward Zhang Tian. Some of the purple lights could bend, and they danced toward Zhang Tian like purple dragons. This scene appeared very beautiful, but it was actually incomparably dangerous. Wherever the purple light passed, the earth was pierced tens of thousands of miles deep, and even the demonic earth that contained the demonic laws was melted into magma. Zhang Tian was at the center of the purple waterfall, and he was washed by the purple waterfall and bitten and swallowed by the purple poisonous dragons. The purple divine lamp's power was boundless. It was refined by a real star, and it was more condensed and full of spirituality. It turned into destructive light and rays, and it was going to burn Zhang Tian into ashes. Boom! Zhang Tian sighed softly, and suddenly he formed a seal with his fingers and cast 1,000 lotuses. The divine great Dao of gung metal turned into lotus petals, which were more condensed than the great Dao treasure metal. They wrapped Zhang Tian tightly, resisting the purple light and rays. In the next moment, this golden lotus suddenly cut through the sky, splitting the purple light, and flew toward the fox-masked saint. The eyes behind the mask flashed with terror. It was too late for him to take back the purple lamp and escape. This was because Zhang Tian had actually used a great divine tier great Dao to suppress the void, forming a domain that froze the purple lamp in place. This time the bronze-masked man was in a dilemma. He wanted to escape, but his trump card was actually being controlled by Zhang Tian. Gritting his teeth, the fox-masked saint could only burn his inner world to dodge Zhang Tian while continuing to activate the magic lamp, hoping to refine Zhang Tian as soon as possible. However, the golden lotus soon split the purple radiance apart and rushed toward the bronze-masked saint. Whoosh! The 1,000 lotuses bloomed. Zhang Tian leaped out like a god from the flowers and slashed at the bronze-masked saint with his fingers like a knife. Divine ranked vermilion bird's great Dao of fire. Let me show you the true power of the great Dao. In an instant, a long flaming knife was formed and slashed toward the saint. Every flame had a vermilion bird flying in the sky. Endlessly fire runes formed an endless sea of fire like the sun. Block it. Feeling the power that seemed to be able to burn the 9 heavens, the fear in the bronze-masked man's eyes intensified. With a roar, he took out a black translucent shield that looked like black jade. This shield was made of Xianming cold jade. This type of jade could only be born in an extremely cold place like the 9 Serenities Hell. It was extremely cold and condensed. Playing. The moment Zhang Tian's vermilion bird-leaf fire knife collided with the black shield, the entire time seemed to have frozen. Playing. The sound of the collision was earth-shattering. It was so loud that it almost made one's eardrums explode. The rolling sound waves rushed into the sky, broke through the Great Critical Canyon and rolled toward St. Origin World, creating a hurricane in a radius of 1 million miles. Such power was terrifying. Even Saint Qianmo was terrified. She knew that even if she attacked with all her strength, she wouldn't be able to unleash even a tenth of such power. Crack. In the next moment the crowd was shocked to see that the shield made of Xianming cold jade actually cracked under the flaming long saber. The frightening cracks spread across the entire shield like a spider web. In the next moment the shield suddenly collapsed, melted and turned into flames that scattered in all directions. No. The fox-masked man looked at Jiang Tian as if he was looking at a demon. Because Jiang Tian's flame hadn't touched him and he was blocked by the Xianming shield, it still burned his arm until it cracked and he lost his life. Under extreme fear, the bronze-masked man quickly retreated as if he didn't care about his life. At this moment he didn't care about the purple-gold divine lamp that Jiang Tian had frozen in the sky. He only wanted to run for his life. The Immortal Feather Great Dao treasure metal was very mysterious. It was said that after the immortal birds of the immortal world died, they fused with metal and the immortal Dao law in the immortal birds were attached to it. Therefore the armor made of Immortal Feather Great Dao treasure metal naturally had the effect of increasing speed. Whoosh! Countless feather patterns appeared on the armor. The fox-masked man suddenly opened two wings that were completely made of Dao and Dao. His speed instantly soared to an unprecedented level. It was as if he could instantly cross the sea of stars in the universe. He broke through space. At this moment he was terrified. Run. Escape first. What is this kid's background? He's only at the soul formation realm, but he can block the power of the purple star lamp. This is refined from a star and can even penetrate a continent. But it can't even hurt a hair on his body. He even froze it and took it away. What a loss. The Dao of fire that he used is extremely condensed. Can even melt the shield made of Xianming cold jade. This is too terrifying. The surrounding space twisted and retreated frantically. The fox-masked saint gritted his teeth and swore to himself, "Damn it. This kid is really evil. He's like the reincarnation of an immortal. He must have a lot of mystic techniques and treasures on him. I have to prepare well this time. I have to gather the return to void stage saints from other continents and planets. No, it's best to find a Dao integration stage perfected immortal and capture him. Not only do I have to take back my divine lamp, but I also have to find out his secrets. If I can get my hands on them, I'll have a glimmer of hope to transcend the tribulation and become an immortal." The fox-masked sage ran for his life and used the Immortal Feather Great Dao treasure metal to break through space. In the blink of an eye, he crossed hundreds of thousands of kilometers and was about to rush out of the liminal canyon. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared. It was Jiang Tian. How is this possible? The fox-masked sage was shocked. He had used the Immortal Feather Great Dao treasure metal, so his speed was extremely terrifying. However, he was still stopped by Jiang Tian. Chapter 2068. You don't know the existence of the Kuan Peng's divine grade Great Dao. Jiang Tian snorted as a cold smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. The big hand covered the sky and like an inescapable net, it actually crushed the fox-masked saint with bare hands. Then Jiang Tian used the Kuan Peng divine grade Great Dao. It was as if it could destroy the heavens and realms. In a flash he appeared above the Six Paths lotus tree again. To Jiang Tian the distance of 500,000 kilometers was like a single step. He actually only used a few flicks of his fingers. That was the power of a divine grade soul formation cultivator. He was like an adult god who could look down on everything. Does anyone still want to touch the six-path lotus tree? Jiang Tian's gaze swept across the crowd as he asked coldly. Everyone was shocked and no one dared to answer. It was like a rabbit being stared at by an ancient beast. At this moment all the cultivators were trembling. It was an instinctive fear that came from the bottom of their hearts. Jiang Tian's combat power was enough to look down on the entire divine origin world and crush all living beings. He was truly on par with the top giants like Alchemy Saint Gu He and was already stronger than the normal saints. At this moment, all the cultivators turned to look at the void return sages who were hiding in the dark with dense demonic qi. However, the saints who tried to attack were terrified and wanted to retreat. Jiang Tian had just become a soul formation grand cultivator and he had killed 2 void return saints in a row. That was too powerful and had never happened in the history of the divine origin world. At this moment, boom. A group of people rushed out from the depths of the valley. The Iron Hand Saint, the Imperial Master of the Black Moon Empire Yang Yongchang, the sect master of the Thunderyang sect and the others were all panting. Their faces were covered in dust and blood and they were injured. They were forced to retreat by the fiend's claws and were attacked by all kinds of fiends. They had only arrived at this moment. Wow. There's a deity tree here? Are those immortal lights and auspicious colors from before the eruption of this item? The deity chi is so rich. Also, those deity roots broke to prevent themselves from being demonized and devoured by the fiend's claws. They sacrificed their deity chi to this tree? Miraculous. It's really miraculous. We're saved. Yang Yongchang and the others all rubbed their palms and looked at the Six Paths lotus tree with excitement. They were like travelers who had been thirsty in the desert for several days and nights and saw a clear spring in an oasis. They were all heavily injured. Originally, they would have needed 8 to 10 years to heal, but now they only needed a Six Paths lotus petal or a jug of tree sap to heal and return to their peak condition. How could they not be excited? Amidst the clamor, they also quickly flew to the side of the dragon transformation pool, wanting to enjoy the tree sap and celestial chi. Everyone was stunned by the sudden intrusion of this group of giants and saints. No one had expected that they would suddenly barge in and cause new problems. For a moment, everyone was stunned. Actually, this was not strange at all. Originally, cultivators could use spiritual sense to communicate with each other in close range, while they could use communication magic tools to communicate with each other in long range. However, this place was filled with demonic energy and the demonic laws had corroded the magic powers and laws of the human cultivators, causing communication to be interrupted. Iron Arms and the others simply didn't know what was happening outside. Especially the matter of Jiang Tian's breakthrough. Who the hell is this? So wasteful to release such a large pool of celestial tree sap. Is he trying to stuff himself to death? A red-faced half-saint with a full beard shouted. He was so angry that his whole body was trembling, and he looked like he was filled with righteous indignation. The effect of this celestial tree sap was extremely domineering, and its value was way too precious. 1 jug. Only 1 jug. After refining it, it could help him advance to the Void Return realm and become a saint. However, he didn't know which greedy bastard had released so much from the celestial tree. Wasn't this a waste? After cursing, he stuck his butt up and lay on the side of the dragon transformation pool. He stuck his mouth in and gulped down a mouthful. Jiang Tian did not stop him. The sap of the Six Paths lotus tree had been released and absorbed by him before. The celestial chi was not as rich as before. Moreover, the red-faced half-saint did not harm the Six Paths lotus tree anymore. He was just reusing it. The red-faced half-saint with a full beard sat on the ground in a relaxed manner. He closed his eyes slightly and revealed an extremely satisfied and comfortable expression. He smacked his lips and moaned. Comfortable. Delicious. The faces of Huang Linger, Lin Yang and the others twitched. Jiang Tian did not consume the sap at all. Instead, he used it for external use. Strictly speaking, this was Jiang Tian's bathwater. Me too. Immediately, the half-saints and even the saints puckered their lips, stuck their heads out and stretched out their mouths. Like whales sucking in water, they crazily drank the bathwater. After they finished drinking, they all glanced at Mou and the other cultivators of the Eastern Empire very proudly and said domineeringly, "Let me tell you, this pool of celestial tree sap has been monopolized by us. Don't even think about coveting it. That's right. This kind of celestial tree sap is only worthy of us mighty figures. You scoundrels are not qualified." Princess Mou originally wanted to kindly remind them. Hearing this, she couldn't help but snort coldly and roll her eyes. It's just bathwater. Who cares? Before breaking through, Jiang Tian also gave Mou and the others enough lotus and tree sap to thank them for protecting him. It was enough for each of them to break through by a large level. At this moment, the Iron Hand Saint took a few steps forward and took out a sacred weapon. He was about to cut open the Six Paths lotus tree and take out some fresh tree sap. Suddenly, Jiang Tian stretched out his hand and stopped him. He said, "Iron Hand, I said that if anyone dares to touch a leaf of this lotus tree, I will crush him. It's not a joke." "What did you say?" The Iron Hand Saint was stunned. He couldn't believe that Jiang Tian dared to talk to him like that. Of course, Jiang Tian was a genius. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to kill Emperor Yachang so easily. However, even if he was a genius, so what? He was still sent flying by him just now. If it weren't for Saint Qianmao and the Princess of the Eastern Empire stopping him, he would have killed him on the spot. He smiled contemptuously and said, "Haven't you been beaten enough before? How dare a mere nascent soul cultivator stop me?" Jiang Tian originally wanted to take revenge on this person, so of course he wouldn't be polite. "You're mistaken. I'm already a soul formation cultivator." The Iron Hand Saint scanned with his divine sense. Indeed, Jiang Tian already had a divine treasure. However, he was still not afraid. He said arrogantly, "Soul formation cultivator? Even if you're a divine soul formation cultivator, I can still kill you. I don't want to bully a junior. Get out of my way." Yang Yongtong also slapped his own mouth and pointed at the red-faced and bearded half-saint. "I've been led astray by you. The divine tree is here. Of course, we can take fresh tree sap, lotus flowers and even lotus seeds. That's the best way to improve our cultivation." With that, he also walked forward and faced Jiang Tian. He was high and mighty as if he was looking at an ant. He shouted majestically, "Bastard, get out of my way. Don't think that you're so great just because you killed a soul formation cultivator. You're just a country bumpkin, a rogue cultivator of unknown origin. You have no background or inheritance. You're just a first-level soul formation cultivator. You're not qualified to stop us. I didn't kill you because of Lian Huahun and Saint Qianmao of the Luoying sect. Otherwise, an arrogant person like you would have been killed by me." Chapter 2069. The Thunder Yang sect and the Luoying sect were indeed preparing for a marriage alliance. Yang Dingtian might have been killed by Jiang Tian, but the relationship between the Thunder Yang sect and the Luoying sect was still rather good. Therefore, Huang Linger couldn't help but advise out of goodwill, "Senior Yang, you must not provoke him. You can't afford to. He is just a mere soul transformation realm expert. I can't afford to provoke him. You are overestimating him." Yang Yongchang spoke with disdain. "Get lost. What? You don't allow us to move? You are just a soul transformation realm expert and you want to monopolize the immortal opportunity? What a joke. If you dare to stop us again, we will kill you immediately." The half-saints and saints who drank the bathwater were all laughing and chatting as though there was no one around. They didn't even put Jiang Tian in their eyes. They didn't see Jiang Tian killing Xie Zhongying and the fox-masked saint. Otherwise, they wouldn't even dare to let out a fart. The Iron Hand Saint stepped forward and reached out his hand to gently pat Jiang Tian's face. He spoke arrogantly, "Saint Qianmao was protecting you earlier. I didn't kill you. But what about now? She is injured and her disciples are all dead. She doesn't have the strength to protect you. These puny soul transformation realm experts from the Eastern Empire are just mere ants in my eyes. I can crush them with a wave of my hand. Ants should have the self-awareness of ants. In front of me, you should obediently lie on the ground and die silently. You still want to stop me?" He was very arrogant and confident that Jiang Tian wouldn't be able to hurt him. Therefore he was very close to Jiang Tian and patted his face. It wasn't very harmful, but it was extremely insulting. Jiang Tian suddenly raised his hand and grabbed onto his arm, preventing him from landing. He spoke indifferently, "From the beginning to the end, you old bastard have been acting high and mighty with a sense of superiority. Actually, I really want to ask you, is a Void Return Saint really that impressive?" Slap. Jiang Tian suddenly swung his palm and slapped the Iron Hand Saint's face heavily, sending him flying a few hundred miles away. He sneered, "As a puny soul transformation realm expert, it feels really good to slap a Void Return Saint's face." Seeing this, Lei Yongchang and the others were dumbfounded. However, in just a few days this person's strength had actually risen to such an extent. Saint Qianmao shook her head and smiled bitterly. "Sai, why must the Iron Hand Saint do this? He's already so old, yet he still likes to bully the weak. This time he's kicked an iron plate." Rumble. The Iron Hand Saint was sent flying, crashing into one mountain after another. Huge mushroom clouds rose in the sky. He only stopped after crashing into something several thousand li away. Ugh. Iron Hand Saint screamed miserably. Jiang Tian's slap shattered his face. With his strength, it was not a big deal for him to be able to recover quickly from such injuries. But it was too insulting. Being sent flying by a divine transformation cultivator, he simply didn't want to live anymore. This was a great humiliation. Rumble. The Iron Hand Saint soared into the sky, hovering in the air. His cold eyes glared at Zhang Tian. Brat, you dare? What's so great about a return to Void Stage Sage? Zhang Tian looked at his palm and said in a mocking tone, that's right. Is the imperial advisor of a country very powerful? You were slapped in the face by me, an insignificant soul formation cultivator and an unaffiliated cultivator. He rubbed his palms, revealing a look of sudden realization and mocked, that's right. I get it. You're still a little different from ordinary people. Your skin is so thick that it hurts my hand. Don't call yourself the Iron Hand Saint anymore. You should call yourself the Iron Face Saint. Hearing this, many people laughed. Fellow Daoist, you sure have a sharp tongue. You have a sharp tongue. 4 female cultivators like Huang Linger, even though it was not convenient for them to laugh out loud, they still covered their mouths with their jade-like hands. Their beautiful eyes squinted and trembled as they looked at Zhang Tian in fascination. He's talented, powerful and funny. He's the perfect partner. After being humiliated by Zhang Tian and mocked by a group of juniors and female cultivators, the Iron Hand Saint was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. He was the grand preceptor of a great country. Even the emperor had to respect him. Even on this continent he was a giant-level existence. He was like a high and mighty immortal looking down on all living things. But first his beloved disciple Ye Chong was killed by Zhang Tian. He was helpless. Today he was slapped in the face. You're courting death. The Iron Hand Saint shouted. At this moment no one tried to stop the Iron Hand Saint. The few Void Return Saints hiding in the dark wanted to use the Iron Hand Saint to exhaust Zhang Tian so that they could find an opportunity. And Saint Qianma didn't try to persuade Zhang Tian anymore. Because Zhang Tian had already proven his strength with his battle results. He was a giant. She was relieved. Besides, as a giant, Zhang Tian had been humiliated by the Iron Hand Saint and Ye Chong and was almost killed by the Iron Hand Saint. There was no reason for him not to take revenge. Whoosh! The endless void was instantly torn apart by the Iron Hand Saint and thousands of miles were flashed under his feet. He was like a streak of green divine light that pierced through the void. Like a winding lightning bolt he attacked Zhang Tian at an extremely fast speed. But in Zhang Tian's eyes his movements were too slow. He was like an old lady walking in the snow, trembling, careful and slow. Everything was clear. Zhang Tian looked at the broken part of his face and smiled brightly, showing his white teeth. Saint, are you looking down on me? Can you be a little more superior, a little more domineering and then ruthlessly smash your face into my palm? Go to hell. The Iron Hand Saint shouted and took out a sacred weapon which was aimed at Zhang Tian. This sacred weapon was a long golden saber with dragon patterns. It was covered with patterns of the great Tao and all kinds of Dharma laws intertwined. It seemed to be able to kill perfected immortals and cut heavenly gods. The Iron Hand Saint was enraged. Light shone from heaven and earth in his body. Dharma laws rumbled and the great Tao resonated. He poured all his power into this attack. He swore that he would kill Zhang Tian to avenge his humiliation. You're indeed a Void Return Saint. You're ruthless and vicious. You even took out a sacred weapon to kill a puny soul formation cultivator like me. A mocking smile hung on the corners of Zhang Tian's mouth. He stretched out his hands and suddenly grabbed the dragon-patterned gold saber, stopping a sacred weapon with his bare hands. The scene was too shocking. No one could believe it. Lian Huahan was overjoyed and snorted. This kid is too arrogant. He stopped a sacred weapon with his bare hands. Isn't he courting death? Even Saint Qianma looked a little worried and couldn't help but complain in her heart. This fellow Daoist Zhang just likes to show off in front of others. Can't he just fight steadily and surely? However, the next moment, Zhang Tian gripped the dragon-patterned gold-plated long saber firmly. His hand, which was as smooth as jade, was not hurt at all. Crack! As Zhang Tian twisted his hand, an even more shocking scene appeared. The sacred weapon was twisted and broken like a fried dough twist. The Iron Hand Saint's face was pale and cold sweat poured down like a waterfall. The space around him was distorted. That was the result of his divine soul being shocked, which caused the Dharma laws around him to become chaotic. Clang! The two of them punched at the same time and an earth-shattering explosion sounded. The Iron Hand Saint had a strong physical body and was good at fist techniques. He already had an indestructible body. However, under Zhang Tian's punch his fist was broken. Blood and flesh flew everywhere. Broken bones and sacred blood shone with a crystal luster. A drop of it could crush a nascent soul realm cultivator. The power of a punch is so terrifying. The Iron Hand Saint was extremely shocked. He instantly lost all thoughts of revenge and wanted to turn and run. Chapter 2070. However, in the next moment, Zhang Tian swatted down like he was swatting a fly. Kneel. At that moment, the Iron Hand Saint felt as if an immortal was patting his head. The heavy pressure was too much for him to bear. This made people feel that it was too unbelievable. Because at the soul formation and void return levels, it was no longer a battle of strength but a battle of spells. It was a battle of laws and great Tao. And what Zhang Tian used was power, the simplest and purest power. But this power was too terrifying. It was as if a vast and heavy star had struck him. The terrifying power was simply unbearable. Whoosh! The Iron Hand Saint fell like a meteor and knelt on the ground, creating a crater with a radius of 100 miles. This was an indescribable defeat that he could not bear. He was so angry that he was about to go crazy. He was a void return level saint, the state teacher of a great country and a big shot of the continent, but he was beaten so badly by a soul formation cultivator. In fact, if he knew that Xia Zhongying, who had been to the 9 great celestial sects, had been killed by Zhang Tian, and that Zhang Tian had already killed 2 saints in a row, he probably would not be so angry. Zhang Tian was completely trying to torture him like a cat toying with a mouse. Otherwise he could have killed him with 1 strike. It was also because Zhang Tian did not kill him with 1 strike that he thought he could last a few moves against Zhang Tian. A man has gold under his knees. What do you mean by kneeling to me like this? Do you want to be my disciple? Zhang Tian floated in front of the Iron Hand Saint. He was very confident and relaxed, his posture graceful. He placed his hands behind his back and said with a smile, "But I'm just a soul formation itinerant cultivator. My cultivation is too low. I can't accept it." The Iron Hand Saint struggled to get up, but he could not get up at all. Suddenly he was shocked and his face turned pale. He was using pure power, but it did not dissipate for a long time. It was heavier and more terrifying than laws and great Tao. "I'm really ashamed of you kneeling to me like this. You'd better get up." Zhang Tian took a step back and slapped with all his might. The heavy slap landed on the other side of his face, leaving a clear, bloody handprint. Blood spurted out of Iron Hand's mouth and he was sent flying. Once again he fell into the pile of rocks and was unable to stand up. He gritted his teeth and glared at Zhang Tian with a face full of hatred. It was obvious that this was a form of humiliation. It was even worse than killing him. It was like a cat toying with a mouse. Zhang Tian took large strides forward and said calmly, "What's the big deal about humiliating you? That day I hadn't broken through yet and was only a nascent soul cultivator. You and Emperor Yechang led an army to kill me. You just wanted the flaming red toad. You're a return to void stage sage and the imperial advisor of this country, yet you still want to kill a nascent soul cultivator like me? If Saint Qianma hadn't stopped me, I'm afraid you would have killed me back then. What's this little bit of humiliation that you've suffered? It's time to take revenge on you. Let me tell you, when you sent me flying with your palm, I also made the decision to take your life." Zhang Tian's gaze was as sharp as a knife and was extremely cold. After living 2 lifetimes, he had the mentality of a formidable person. However, that did not mean that he would allow others to humiliate him. If he followed his heart, it would be beneficial for his Tao heart cultivation. "Fellow Daoists, are you guys just going to sit by and watch him do evil?" Sensing Zhang Tian's chilling killing intent, Saint Qianma was so scared that he shivered in fear. Knowing that he was no match for Zhang Tian, he immediately tried to sow discord. The 6 Paths Lotus Tree doesn't belong to him alone. Why should he enjoy the blessings alone and stop us? There are close to 20 sages here. Are you afraid that we can't kill him? When he heard that, Saint Qianma's expression changed and he said with a worried expression, "Fellow sages, please listen to me. The demon surge is coming and this is a huge problem. We should work together with fellow Daoist Jiang to defend against the demon surge instead of killing each other. There were only a few dozen returned to void stage sages on this mainland. If they died, there would be 1 less. If too many of them died, there would be less power to defend against the demon surge. It was like the pillars that supported this mainland. If one of them fell, countless lives would be destroyed by the demon surge." The many sages who were hiding in the dark ignored Saint Qianma's persuasion. They were tempted by the Iron Hand Saint and quickly communicated with their divine consciousnesses. At the end of the day, the Six Paths Lotus Tree was too tempting. Jiang Tian had just reached the soul formation stage and he already had the power to suppress the sages. On one hand, it was because Jiang Tian's physique was heaven-defying. On the other hand, the nourishment of the Six Paths Lotus Tree could not be ignored. They were originally unwilling to join forces to kill Jiang Tian because of their status. However, now that Jiang Tian was so powerful, they could not care less. The demon surge is about to erupt and the devil's claws have already awakened. You don't have much time left, Saint Qianmo urged. Plang. Finally, a return to void stage sage could not take it anymore. He walked out from the dark and attacked Jiang Tian. Plang. A huge bronze axe with great Dao runes coiled around it brought with it the power to destroy the world as it chopped down. Could this be the sky-splitting axe? Saint Qianmo exclaimed as her eyes widened. This axe was an extremely powerful sacred weapon. It was said that it was made by imitating the axe that could split heaven and earth in the divine world. During the Middle Ages, it had once dominated an era. Countless experts at the level of sage sect masters had fought with each other in order to obtain this axe. It was said that after a battle in which 3 sages had fallen, the axe disappeared. After that, the axe disappeared without a trace. For tens of thousands of years, it never appeared again. Who would have thought that the axe would reappear in the world this time? The person holding the axe must be extremely powerful. Senior, be careful. Huang Linger and the others all revealed expressions of deep worry. They were also worried for Jiang Tian. This giant axe had the power to split heaven and earth. It was as powerful as Xie Zhangying's attack just now. Another one who wants to die. Jiang Tian's black hair fluttered in the wind. He was as handsome as a god. His eyes flashed and a cold expression appeared on his face. Before he finished speaking, he used the divine-grade Kun Ping nomological laws again. He broke through layers of space and ignored all the nomological laws. He instantly appeared in front of the Azure Dragon masked sage. He reached out with his right hand and broke the sage's wrist. He then snatched the giant axe back. The vermilion bird divine-grade Great Dao burned and instantly wiped away the imprints left by the nomological laws on the axe. He then took the axe for himself. This scene stunned everyone. It was simply too shocking. This was simply unbelievable. This was the imprint left by a return to void stage sage on a sacred weapon. It would take a return to void stage sage a year to remove it. However, under Jiang Tian's vermilion bird divine-grade nomological laws, all of this seemed to be made of wax. The Azure Dragon masked sage's eyes were filled with horror. He couldn't believe it. How is this possible? He had seen Jiang Tian kill Xie Zhangying and the fox-masked sage and slap the Iron Hand sage. He naturally knew that Jiang Tian was very powerful. However, he was confident that he could deal with Jiang Tian with an extremely powerful sacred weapon like the sky-splitting axe. However, he didn't expect that he wouldn't even be able to deal with Jiang Tian. Jiang Tian snatched the sky-splitting axe and swung it at the sage. Crack! The Azure Dragon masked sage exploded from head to toe. All kinds of Dharma treasures, Daoist robes, divine soul, physical body, and even his inner world were destroyed. At that moment, it was as if a star had been destroyed and a world-ending disaster had erupted. The entire critical boundary canyon trembled as if it was about to collapse. At that moment, the entire Saint Origin world could feel the terrifying fluctuations. Everything within a radius of a few million miles couldn't calm down. Torrential waves were set off. It hurts. The Iron Hand sage was covered in wounds from the explosion. He couldn't stop vomiting blood as he wailed in pain. Jiang Tian was only a few feet away from him, but he wasn't affected at all. Even his white robe wasn't stained by a speck of dust. Even Huang Linger and Qianmo Sage behind him were protected by him and were completely unharmed. Chapter 2071. Another sage has fallen. Even the heaven-splitting axe was taken by him. This kid is too strong. At this moment, many of the sages present were trembling. Lian Huahun was dumbfounded by Jiang Tian. All the Void Return sages were suppressed by Jiang Tian. In fact, the Azure Dragon masked sage did not want to fight Jiang Tian alone. Instead, he had already discussed it with 2 other sages. He would attract Jiang Tian's attention while the other 2 sages would wait for an opportunity to launch a sneak attack and kill him. Unfortunately, Jiang Tian killed him too quickly, and the other 2 sages did not have a chance to attack. Killing 3 sages in a row and suppressing 1 sage. How glorious was such a battle record? Who could match him? On this continent no one could compete with him. He was like an uncrowned king. Since ancient times there had never been such an expert. With a mere soul formation cultivation base, he had slaughtered great sages and blocked sacred weapons with his bare hands. Such a battle record was enough to be recorded in history and be praised for generations to come. Fellow Daoist Zhang, don't kill me. The Iron Hand sage's eyes were filled with despair. He was terrified to the extreme and began to plead. This old man is a void return sage after all. I am willing to follow you and become your most loyal servant. He felt that he was still bound by the force field that Jiang Tian had just released and could not break free. He was like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, and the fear in his heart grew even stronger. You are useless to me. Jiang Tian's eyes were cold as he suddenly stretched out his hand. Puff. He grabbed the Iron Hand sage's head and dug his fingers deep into it like steel hooks. Puff. Spare me. I have already submitted. Why do you still want to kill me? You have killed too many people. You are too vicious. Heaven, I will definitely take you away. The Iron Hand sage screamed crazily. His voice was shrill and his pleas were unsuccessful, so he began to curse. However, Jiang Tian did not show the slightest bit of mercy. Suddenly, he pulled the Iron Hand sage's head and a long section of his spine out of his body. It was as if the inner world of a universe was brought out and forcibly crushed by Jiang Tian. Puff. The saint's blood dyed the sky red, and every drop weighed more than 10,000 kilograms. The countless great Daoists and laws within his inner world were being destroyed and collapsing. It was as terrifying as the collapse of a universe, and it resonated with the outside world and the great Daoists. At this moment, everyone fell silent, their hearts trembling with fear. He didn't show any signs of fatigue even after killing 4 saints. This person's battle prowess is simply heaven-defying. I'm afraid that even if we join forces, we won't be able to kill him. Forget it, forget it. Every day counts. It's better not to take risks. We can't do it here. There are other secret chambers that have been opened, or there might be immortal opportunities. There is no need for us to be obsessed with this place and provoke this person. All of the return to void stage saints didn't dare to stay any longer as they all turned around and fled from this perilous place. But Jiang Tian threw the bloody head and spine on the ground and said with a cold look in his eyes, "If at least you know what's good for you. Otherwise I'll slaughter all of you as well." However, Jiang Tian did not chase after him. These return to void stage saints were indeed selfish, but they belonged to this continent after all. They would live and die with this continent. When demonic creatures appeared, they would also kill and defend against them. Jiang Tian would soon leave this continent, so there was no need to kill them. They're gone. They're finally gone. Senior One, Huang Linger, eldest princess Mou Lin Yang, and the others were all overjoyed. He's too powerful. Is he still human? A mere soul formation stage cultivator killed 4 saints and scared the rest of the return to void stage saints away. This person is like a true immortal descending from the heavens. The surrounding cultivators who were originally itching to take advantage of the situation also gave up at this moment. After all, their lives were more important. Even the 4 sages had been killed by Jiang Tian. What could these divinity transformation and nascent soul cultivators possibly amount to? The demonic tide is about to rise. Let's retreat. Yeah, even the Iron Hand Saint has returned. We can't stop him. Streaks of light rose up and flew out of the Grand Canyon. There were too many unforeseen events in this expedition. Not only were there many demonic creatures and fiend chi, but the key was that the quasi-immortal tree collapsed and the devil's claws recovered. The most terrifying thing was that Jiang Tian had also absorbed a lot of the immortal spirit chi of the 6 Paths lotus tree. It was like a small tree that was still growing but had its branches and leaves cut off by Jiang Tian. Its vitality was instantly depleted. Originally, that mighty figure planted it to resist the demonic tide. Now it would be difficult to continue. Sigh. Seeing this, Saint Qianma sighed and walked to Jiang Tian's side. Saint Qianma glanced at the 6 Paths lotus tree and said, "Fellow Daoist, even the Iron Hand Saint has retreated. I'm sure that the demonic tide will be unprecedentedly violent. Now that half of the immortal spirit chi of the 6 Paths lotus tree has been taken away by you, its dermic powers have also decreased sharply. I wonder if it still has the ability to resist the demonic tide. As soon as she said that, Lian Huahan also looked at Jiang Tian with slight mockery and said, "Fellow Daoist, the demonic tide is approaching. You're not thinking of running away, are you?" In her opinion, Jiang Tian monopolizing the Six Paths Lotus Tree was selfish. As for what he said before, he had the ability and would do his best to resist the demonic tide. She was afraid that he would not admit it. After all, he had already taken advantage of it. Moreover, even if Jiang Tian had the ability to kill a saint, Lian Huahan did not think that he had the ability to resist the demonic tide. She had not even stepped into the deepest part of the canyon. The demonic immortal roots that she had encountered were already extremely terrifying. Jiang Tian shook his head and looked deeply into the depths of the demonic tide. "I'm running away. I came here for 2 reasons. The first is for the immortal fate of the Six Paths Lotus Tree. The second is to refine that demonic creature. I can't wait." "What?" Saint Qianma heard this and was shocked. Her face was pale and she hurriedly tried to persuade him. "I heard that demonic creature came from the shed skin of a demon realm giant. It has a strong demonic qi and demonic nature. If you're not careful, you'll be contaminated and your cultivation will be ruined. Fellow Daoist, you'd better not take the risk. We'll wait here for Gu He and the others from the Saint Alliance to come. Then we'll work together to defeat that demonic creature. Everything will be fine." But what she did not know was, Jiang Tian had the demon soul of the prison-suppressing demon, which had the characteristics of a soul devourer. He could completely devour everything. But the demon soul of the prison-suppressing demon, even if it was completed, was only a soul energy and not a physical body. It coexisted with the main divine soul and lived in a body that did not belong to him. But if Jiang Tian refined the devil's claws, it would become a physical body and become one of his demon soul avatars. Although Jiang Tian had the chaotic divine body, it was still not invincible. It was not perfect. And most of the time, the demon soul of the prison-suppressing demon could completely make up for the shortcomings of the chaotic divine body. It had the characteristics of contaminating the laws of the mortal realm and the immortal realm. It also had the effect of catching people off guard. The devil's claws could only be suppressed by a subimmortal tree. But after 10,000 years, not only was it not purified by the immortal tree, but it had also demonized more than half of the immortal tree's immortal roots. How could it be simple? So Jiang Tian's words were not exaggerated at all. The devil's claws were also his goal. However, obtaining the immortal fate of the Six Paths Lotus Tree and advancing to the soul formation realm was his first goal. Otherwise, he really did not have 100% confidence in refining the devil's claws. There was the danger of being devoured by it. At this moment, Lian Huahuan's communication jade tablet flashed. She took a look and her expression changed. She said, "Senior Qianma, my father said that the Saint Alliance has decided to resist the demon wave outside the canyon. He wants us to retreat quickly." Chapter 2072. What? Isn't that retreating without a fight? Saint Qianma frowned. She was very unhappy and immediately took out her communication jade tablet to communicate with the Saint Alliance. But soon, her face turned ugly. The Saint Alliance, including the sect master of the Luoying sect and the hall master of the ancient medicine hall Gu He, had a very simple message. Because there were too many changes in this expedition, the people's hearts were scattered and so were the teams. Now almost all the sects and countries had left the canyon. They were no longer a threat. The Luoying sect and the Eastern Empire alone couldn't stop the mutated fiend's claws. So they could only exchange space for time and gather many sects and countries to set up an array at the entrance of the canyon to kill the fiend's claws. Saint Qianma was about to discuss with the sect master of the Luoying sect. Suddenly, the ground shook and there were waves of terrifying demonic energy in the void. Whoosh! The demonic energy waves were endless and there were black ripples in the air. These demonic ripples came from thousands of miles away, but they easily penetrated the space and tore the laws. And there was no weakening at all, as if they could be transmitted to an infinite place. Everyone instantly had a feeling that their hands and feet were tied, and they also felt a kind of evil and filthy feeling in their hearts. This is the fiend's claws? Everyone looked into the distance in horror. The void cracked and an 8-clawed strange fish rushed in front of everyone. The fiend's claws that had evolved into a head had horns on its fingers and it was very flat. Below it, Many demonized vines of the deity roots danced in the air like the tentacles of a squid, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Each of these roots had the power to penetrate a soul formation cultivator and seriously injure a void return saint. Their dharma power was powerful and they could change at will. There were countless of them and they were extremely terrifying. Lian Huahun looked at Jiang Tian angrily and said, "Everything would have been fine if we had left earlier." "Senior, what's that?" Suddenly there was another exclamation. Princess Mou and the others were all shocked. Saint Qianma also looked up with an extremely serious expression. "It's the ancient demons from another world." Hearing this, Lian Huahun's face turned pale and she trembled. "What? They haven't successfully invaded for tens of thousands of years. How come this time?" Behind the Devil's Claws, space tunnels were formed one after another. Ancient-looking black iron battleships rushed past their piers and floated around the Devil's Claws. Those battleships were all 10 miles long. They looked extremely shocking, like ancient battleships. It was extremely ancient and covered in blade and sword scars. Its entire body was forged from a demonic black body. Demonic blood flowed through it and demonic symbols covered its surface. The warship was filled with black-armored demon race masters. They were all covered in black scales and had strange horns on their heads. Their appearances were hideous and terrifying, and their eyes flickered with demonic red light. All sorts of demonic laws surged around them, and they were filled with a brutal and evil demonic aura. This was the ancient demon clan. Even in the demon realm they were considered strong. Even if they were not cultivators, they had the strength of a gold core cultivator of the beauty clan. Once it was cultivated, it would be even more tyrannical. Before the recovery of the Devil's Claws, it could only attract some fragments of the demonic realm that were cruising in the universe, or some demons that were hunting nearby. Jiang Tian looked at the void with deep eyes. He stood in front of the crowd and explained calmly. Once the Devil's Claws are recovered, it is like a signal flare in the universe and it can make the entire demon realm feel its existence. Its existence is like a space anchor. It gives the ancient demons a target to cross the void and come here. To put it bluntly, the Devil's Claws were the remains of the Devil Emperor. In the demon realm it was a sacred object. It was similar to the Saraira that humans on Earth liked to worship. The demon race also revered it and liked to follow it. Now that the Devil's Claws were recovered, it could bring blessings and strength to the demon race. Of course, they would worship it even more like a servant. At least hundreds of huge black battleships poured out. In the end, they were densely packed in the void, blocking people's sight and bringing an extremely uncomfortable sense of pressure. At this moment, Huang Linger, Princess Mou and the others were so shocked that they could not speak. Even Saint Qianma's face was solemn, as if she was facing a formidable enemy. However, this was still not the end. In the end, a huge battleship that was 100 miles long squeezed out of the space passage and appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The hull of the battleship was cast with dark blue demonic gold. At the bow of the ship, there was a huge and ferocious demonic dragon head, exuding a brutal and terrifying aura. The most eye-catching thing was the iron flag on the dragon head. The iron flag was completely made of heavy metal pieces connected together, which was why it could withstand the violent gales of the universe. It fluttered in the wind, and the image of a 9-headed demon was carved on it. The moment Saint Qianma saw the flag, she was completely petrified. Her face was full of shock. This is the symbol of the ancient demon's royal family. How is this possible? Throughout history, the royal family has never appeared in the critical Grand Canyon. The royal family was an extremely powerful existence in the ancient demons. A demon king could easily crush a human void return saint. It's over. We're doomed. This Jiang guy has killed us. He shouldn't have absorbed and refined the immortal spiritual qi of the 6 paths lotus tree. Otherwise he could have used it to resist for a while. A trace of deep despair appeared on Lian Huahun's face. Her delicate body trembled slightly and her legs turned to jelly. She couldn't even stand properly. Although she had never personally encountered the ancient demons and the royal family, she had read many records about them. Some of the records were even passed down from other galaxies. The royal family was too powerful. They were far more powerful than the demon generals and demon commanders. They were comparable to Dao Reunion perfected immortals. It could be said that in the entire Saint Origin world, no one other than the top great saints like Gu He and Xie Zhangyin could contend with them. Not to mention they had so many battleships and the awakened Devil's Claws. Therefore, in her opinion, Jiang Tian had no ability to resist the raging demonic tide. She could even say that the Saint Origin world was going to be destroyed and become the territory of the demon race. And who was to blame for all of this? Of course it was Jiang Tian. Because he had destroyed the Six Paths lotus tree. At the very least he had made it weak, withered, and exhausted. Rumble. When it rains, it pours. Outside the liminal Grand Canyon, Pil Saint Gu He and the people of the Saint Alliance suddenly discovered something. A rumbling sound like a millstone grinding came from the void. A large area of the liminal Grand Canyon gradually became transparent as if it was about to leave this world. Not good. It's time, the liminal Grand Canyon is about to close. A saint exclaimed. Doesn't that mean the demonic tide can't attack? No matter how strong the demons are, they won't be able to penetrate the boundary between the two worlds. Another saint was pleasantly surprised. But Qian Ma and the people of the Eastern Empire haven't come out yet. Someone shook his head with a bitter smile. Jiang Tian and the others also saw it. The originally solid canyon, from the big mountains and ravines to the small plants and rocks, was gradually turning into nothingness. They could see the surrounding evil-infested ridge and the endless spatial ocean at the bottom. The liminal Grand Canyon was moving away from the Saint Origin world. Lian Huahan, that girl, why hasn't she come out yet? This is going to be troublesome. The sect master of the Luo Ying sect was worried about his daughter. His heart was burning with anxiety. He wanted to rush in but was stopped by Gu He. Once the liminal Grand Canyon disappeared, it would take at least 1,000 years for it to reappear. Even with the strength of a saint, it would be difficult to find the way back in the vast and endless void. Chapter 2073. In essence, the formation of the liminal canyon was a fragment of space that connected the demonic world and the simplified world of humans. The so-called disappearance of the liminal canyon meant that the fragment of space entered the unpredictable space turbulence and storms. No one knew where it would go. It might be the end of the universe. Even if one had the strength of a sage, it would be difficult to find the way back in the vast void. No one knew what kind of dangers they would encounter and what kind of laws and environments they would face if they followed the fragment of space. The dangers of the universe were terrifying. Even Dao Reunion perfected immortals could die in the deep and boundless universe, let alone void-returned sages. In the liminal canyon, many cultivators' faces were ashen, and they were filled with despair and fear. Fellow cultivator, what should we do next? Even Saint Qianma's expression changed as she looked at Jiang Tian. Her emotions were very complicated. There was shock, fear, pity, and worry. Even if the Devil's Claws appeared, she was not afraid. It was not that the Devil's Claws were not scary. In a battle between cultivators, one had to be fearless. However, when she sensed the abnormal movement of the space fragment, fear appeared in Saint Qianma's beautiful eyes, which had experienced many vicissitudes of life for the first time. If they were taken away by the fragment of space, they would definitely die. Only Lian Huahan looked at Jiang Tian mockingly. Do we have a choice in this situation? We can only run away. Retreat as soon as possible. The abnormality of space is very dangerous. Even Dao Reunion perfected immortals can't guarantee that they can escape unscathed, let alone him. Her eyes were full of contempt. In the face of danger, one should learn to judge the situation and not blindly act recklessly. That was brainless. She was not the only one. At this moment, most of the people chose to retreat. Riding on clouds, they sped towards the entrance of the canyon like a raging tide. They had to rush to a safe place and into the camp of the Sage Alliance before the fragment separated from the mainland. It's the last moment. Break the spear and shatter the shield. In today's battle, blood will stain the yellow sand and the demonic emperor will cover the sky. A series of strange words came out from the mouth of the demonic emperor's claws. It was as if the scales of a monster were rubbing against the ground. The words were extremely evil and had an ancient aura. Once it was said, the heavens and earth trembled and the space was distorted as if it had infinite dermic powers. Or chase. At this moment the demons were getting anxious as well. One by one the demon race mighty figures roared into the sky. Their scarlet eyes burned with greed, and they were filled with brutality and bloodlust. Billowing demonic energy covered the sky like dark clouds. The black iron battleships split the space like peerless heavenly knives and rushed toward the entrance of the valley. The The spatial fragment had mutated and separated from the continent. The passage between the two worlds had been closed. They wouldn't be able to invade Saint Origin World for the next 1,000 years or even longer. This was unacceptable to them. No matter what, they had to rush to Saint Origin World and feast on the flesh and blood of the human race. In fact, at this moment, many demons were connected to the consciousness of the Devil's Claws, as if they were its appendages. Take over this continent, kill all living things and make it the territory of the dead demons. Don't touch this brat. The immortal destiny belongs to me. At this moment the eyes of the Devil's Claws, which were long and twisted like scars, were fixed on Xianxia. It was extremely greedy and wanted to seize the immortal fate. At this moment the Saint Alliance didn't make any moves. The critical canyon was about to close and the demon wave had finally erupted. Xianxia was almost alone and without help. Only Huang Linger, Qianma and a few old friends from the Eastern Empire were left to fight with him. Their forces were very weak. At this moment Saint Qianma, who looked like a 30-year-old woman whose real age couldn't be seen, finally showed a trace of weakness on her beautiful face. She was like a fairy that had fallen to the mortal world. Forget it. Forget it. When faced with danger, someone has to step forward bravely. I bear the title of a saint and enjoy the worship of thousands of people. I have the blessing of mind power and good fortune. How can I be a coward in the face of danger? If I can fight against the demon wave with Daoist Zhang, why should I be afraid of death? Even if I die, it will be a blessing. Saint Qianma's face was filled with endless determination. She was about to unleash her saint domain and soar into the sky to stop the demons for the final battle. Patter. Xianxia suddenly took a step forward and stood in front of everyone. Daoist. Saint Qianma was slightly stunned. Daoist Qianma, take everyone away. You're the strongest, protect them well. Xianxia turned around and smiled at her. The next moment, within Xianxia's body, the divine treasury that was like a divine watchtower shone brightly, causing Xianxia to be covered in a layer of light, making him appear incomparably majestic and holy. Within the divine treasures of the heavenly court's divine watchtower, an indomitable god roared towards the sky. Boom! Countless divine-grade great Daos soared into the sky from his body. Incomparably heavy domains surged and spread out like an iron curtain that covered the sky and blocked everything. Senior, no. You've just become a soul formation cultivator and your foundation isn't stable yet. You've used a lot of energy to kill saints. You can't fight anymore. At this moment Princess Mou and the others were extremely concerned and tried to persuade him anxiously. Even Qianma felt that something was wrong. No matter how high Xianxia's soul formation grade was, he had to use a heavenly will secret art to kill saints and consume his origin. It was almost like burning a god and he had to pay a huge price. At this moment she was very worried. Xianxia looked strong but was actually weak. He was like a lamp that had run out of oil. If he consumed any more origin energy in a short time he might burn a god and collapse the divine treasure. Don't worry. Fellow cultivators, I'm confident. If we're fated we'll meet again. Xianxia smiled and opened his hand. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The divine grade Daos of gung metal surged out of the divine treasure and poured into Xianxia's palm. A golden lotus bloomed on Xianxia's palm and the petals shone with a metallic luster. It was extremely condensed and bright. 1,000 lotuses. Xianxia curled his lips and couldn't help but chuckle. The first time he successfully used the 1,000 lotuses, divine power, was when he returned to Earth from the South Gate planet region and fought with Han Ming and the other invaders. Besides, he had to use the green lotus golden lotus to infuse the laws of gung metal. But now he just waved his hand and it was extremely natural and smooth, as if it was supposed to be like this. Moreover, the 1,000 lotuses at this time were more than 100 times more condensed than before. Even if a star burned or a meteor hit, it wouldn't be affected at all. Xianxia waved his hand, and the 1,000 lotus flowers suddenly expanded, sucking everyone into it and then tightly closed. Senior, don't. Qianma, Mou, Lin Yang and the others shouted crazily in the 1,000 lotuses. Unfortunately they couldn't stop Xianxia at all. Stop him and leave the food behind. The Devil's Claws let out a roar. At this time he had already understood what Xianxia wanted to do. He wanted to protect everyone and let the space fragments escape faster. He wanted to fight the demons alone. Chapter 2074. Unfortunately it was too late. Live on. Zhang Tian said faintly and threw it with all his might. Whoosh! The golden lotus flower was like a meteor that flew across the sky, breaking through the dark demonic chi and piercing through more than 10 black iron battleships that tried to stop it. Rumble! The battleships of the demon race were made of black demon gold, about 10 miles long, and engraved with demon race runes. They were battleships of the demon race that had survived hundreds of battles. They were completely capable of conquering continents and destroying stars. However, at this moment, they were torn apart by a small metal ball as if they were made of paper. Then, like fireworks, they suddenly blossomed in the air, sending flames everywhere. Then the 1,000 lotus flower broke through the space barrier and went through the twisting space turbulence. It opened up a long path and arrived at the space where the Saint Origin world was located. It arrived at the evil-infested ridge and gently landed. The 1,000 lotus flower opened. No. Princess Mo looked at the space fragments that were gradually disappearing and her tears were flowing out. Lin Yang and Fang Guoyu also had red eyes. Saint Qianma, congratulations on your safe return. Later we still have to fight side by side against the incoming demonic wave. The experts of the Saint Alliance and the saints all greeted Saint Qianma. Saint Qianma nodded slightly and was too lazy to be polite. After all, Zhang Tian was just an outsider and he was leading the army to fight against the demonic race. However, these saints who were known as the pillars of the continent were afraid of death and hid at the back. Noticing Saint Qianma's coldness, everyone was embarrassed. Even Gu He's face turned red. They seemed to have a good reason and paid attention to strategy and safety. However, the essence was that they were afraid of death. Demonic creatures could continuously demonize other living beings. In theory, the number and power of demonic creatures would increase exponentially. The best time to kill them was when they were still in the budding stage. The longer they waited, the more passive they would be. In fact, these saints were all observing. If the devil's claws were not strong, they would be completely confident in their ability to kill them. Then they would be respected by everyone. If the devil's claws were too strong, perhaps they would leave their people behind, abandon their homeland and flee. Among the crowd, only the master of the Luo Ying sect did not care about Saint Qianma's cold attitude. He stared at the entrance of the critical Grand Canyon, his eyes filled with anxiety and panic. That was because his daughter Lian Huahun had not come out yet. Saint Qianma turned her head and scanned with her spiritual consciousness. One after another, the demon race's mighty figures rushed out and quickly engulfed Lian Huahun and the other cultivators. They opened their bloody mouths and gnawed with all their might, turning the cultivators into their food. However, Lian Huahun had not been devoured. Instead, she had been demonized. Her body rapidly expanded. 2 twisted horns grew on her head, her body was covered in scales and her back was covered in bone spurs. Her demonic blood-red eyes were like the vertical pupils of a cold-blooded animal, filled with bloodthirst and brutality. She followed the army of demons and charged toward the entrance of the valley. Daughter! The sect master of the Luo Ying sect stretched out his hand and let out a mournful cry as tears of blood rolled down his face. But in the end, no one dared to rescue him. Father, I've become a demon. Hearing her father's call, the demonized Lian Huahun suddenly turned to look at him, tears slowly seeping out of her eyes. The consciousness of her original body seemed to have not completely disappeared. Her rationality and humanity were still there. That was because her eyes were still shining with longing, fear, despair, and indignation. However, before long, her Dao heart would collapse completely and be taken over by the demonic intent. She would no longer have any humanity left, only brutality, greed, killing, destruction, and hatred. That was even scarier than death. At this moment, her remaining consciousness was filled with regret. At the last moment, she was clearly the first to escape. However, Qianma and the others managed to escape under the protection of Zhang Tian's 1,000 lotus flower. As for her, she was devoured and demonized. She had underestimated Zhang Tian after all. Furthermore, she understood that Zhang Tian was disgusted with her. Otherwise, he could have killed her easily. However, she could not blame Zhang Tian. That was because she was truly too stupid to stand against Zhang Tian time and time again. The next moment, the remaining rationality and humanity in Lian Huahun's eyes disappeared without a trace. Only hatred and brutality were left as she roared into the skies. Kill. The power of demonization caused all the cultivators, including the powerhouses of the Saint Alliance, to shudder. The sect master of the Luoying sect was so sad that he collapsed to the ground. Just as all the saints were worried that the demonic creatures would rush to the entrance of the valley. More and more spatial turbulence appeared, like rivers converging into an ocean. It completely separated the space of the critical realm fragment from the space of Saint Origin world. The vast space between the two was quickly filled with a blue spatial storm. It was chaotic and distorted. Even void return saints would not be able to cross it. They would be torn apart and turned into nothingness. The demonic creatures and battleships that wanted to rush out were instantly destroyed as soon as they came into contact with the spatial storm. The remaining demonic creatures stood at the edge of the space and roared in the direction of Saint Origin world. In this dangerous and surging spatial storm, the originally vast critical realm fragment seemed extremely small. It was like a small boat in the middle of a huge ocean, gradually drifting away. In the critical realm fragment, a five-colored divine light gradually rose. That was Zhang Tian accumulating power and preparing to attack. In the end, Zhang Tian's figure was completely covered by the five-colored light and could no longer be seen. At this time, Qian Mo turned her head and looked at Mou and the others who were crying. Everyone, don't cry. He is a hero, a true hero. I promised him to protect you and I will definitely do it. From today onwards, I will be the imperial advisor of the Eastern Empire. Until the day I return to the heavens. She said resolutely, trying to persuade everyone not to be sad, but her eyes were also red. This meant that she would be leaving the Luoying sect in the future. But the Luoying sect master had nothing to say. At this moment, everyone looked at the critical realm fragment that was gradually being engulfed by the spatial storm. Their eyes were filled with shock. "Sai, it's not easy to come here. Let's go in and have a look." Suddenly, in the crowd, an old man dressed in shabby linen clothes took a step forward while holding the hand of a little girl dressed in purple. His figure flashed and rushed toward the critical realm fragment in the vast spatial storm. "Fellow Daoist. You can't. Brother." At this moment, many people exclaimed, thinking that he would be torn apart by the critical realm fragment. However, the haggard old man's face was calm as if nothing was happening. He walked through the critical realm fragment as if he was walking on flat ground like a fish swimming in the water. This person is probably an expert from other continents. In an instant, countless sages were shocked. This old man was wearing a beggar's robe. His appearance was not shocking, but his strength was too terrifying, far surpassing that of ordinary sages. Not only could he cross the spatial storm, but he also protected his nascent soul stage cultivation base, the porcelain doll-like little girl. It's very likely that he is from a high-level continent, or even a large sect from a vassal continent of the 9 major celestial sects. A trace of worry appeared on Saint Qianmo's face. Her eyes were filled with horror. Even if Zhang Tian was lucky enough to survive the Devil's Claws, it was still extremely dangerous to meet such an expert. Chapter 2075. Saint Origin World was located at the edge of the central galaxy. It was like a small town without any level. The core belonged to the 9 major celestial sects, just like the international metropolises on Earth. However, there was a transition between the two. Some high-level continents, stars, star clusters and star regions were scattered all over the place. Many of them were vassals of the 9 major celestial sects. Those who could obtain their true arts were all very powerful. Could it be him? Did he cross the sea of stars to come here? The hall master of the ancient medicine hall, Pil Saint Gu He, scanned the old man with his divine sense. Suddenly, his expression changed as if he had understood something. "Senior, take me with you." Suddenly, Gu He leaped and actually rushed towards the spatial storm as well. The old man in linen clothes laughed. "You little brat, you just have to join in the fun." "Fine." With a casual wave of his hand, he actually drew Gu He to his side, protecting him and preventing him from being disturbed by the spatial storms. The 3 of them rushed into the depths of the storm until no one's divine sense could penetrate it. At this moment, everyone looked at each other. Pil Saint Gu He knew the old man, and it seemed that the old man was very senior and had a powerful background. Inside the liminal fragment, the Jiang Tian divine treasury opened. It was like a world and he placed Huang Linger inside. At this moment he had nothing to hold him back. He could finally go all out. With his hands clasped behind his back, he stood alone between heaven and earth, facing the raging Devil's Claws, the endless ancient demon royal family, and the overwhelming number of devil clan monsters with a smile on his face. It's been a long time since I've had a good fight. I hope you won't disappoint me. As soon as he finished speaking, his fighting spirit soared into the sky. Endless divine-grade great Daoists appeared like rainbows piercing through the sun. I have a sword that can fight against 1,000,000 masters. Amidst the violent and surging spatial storm, the critical Grand Canyon shook violently, like a giant boat that was swaying in the storm. Gusts of intense spatial wind even broke through the cracks in the boundary wall and blew into the canyon. Countless rocks, plants, and demonic beasts were blown into pieces by the strong winds that tore through space. Damn it! Seeing that Qianma and the others had escaped to the world of Saint Origin World, the Devil's Claws let out a furious roar. Countless tentacles were wriggling crazily as if they were going to tear the sky apart. The next moment, one of the tentacles of the Devil's Claws pointed straight at Zhang Tian like a finger, with eternal hatred as if it wanted to destroy all life. A fierce and violent voice came out. "Seventh Demon General, kill this human. Cut off his head and burn his soul with the netherworld demonic flames for 10,000 years. Let him know what he did wrong. The rest of the ancient demons and royal clans follow me." After that, from the Devil's Claws, billowing demonic aura rose to the sky. He wanted to break through the void and force his way through the sea of spatial storms to pursue Saint Origin World. Except for a fleet that went to outflank Zhang Tian, the other Black Iron warships followed the Devil's Claws and rushed towards Saint Origin World. "You guys are ignoring me too much." There was no joy or sorrow in Zhang Tian's eyes. He took a step forward and shouted coldly, "God's domain." Boom. Mighty 5-colored divine-grade great Daoists rushed out from his back and turned into 5 heavenly pillars. The roars of the vermilion bird, the black tortoise, the Kuan Ping, and the azure dragon shook the sun and the moon. It was an earth-shattering vision derived from the divine-grade great Daoists. Each vision was more powerful than an ordinary god and was comparable to a void-returned supreme saint. The moment Zhang Tian cast his vision, the space within 1,000 miles instantly turned into Zhang Tian's domain. In an instant, Zhang Tian became the lord of this world, the true ruler, like a god descending to the mortal world. Countless black iron warships of the ancient demons were frozen in the air, like mosquitoes frozen in amber. Even the mighty space-time storm was condensed in the void at this moment, turning into transparent ripples. How is this possible? At this moment, all the demons were shocked and dumbfounded. They couldn't believe it. Including the ancient demons and the noble and powerful royal clans, they all showed a rare look of fear. The laws of the demon realm were more violent and more terrifying. Once the laws of the mortal world came into contact with them, they would be contaminated, disintegrated, and collapsed. They couldn't withstand a single blow. A domain was only a manifestation of the laws of the mortal world, but it was still an external manifestation of the laws and great Daoists. The domains of ordinary humans couldn't trap the demons at all, just like butter couldn't stop a hot knife. Yet, Zhang Tian's domain had trapped them. How could they not be shocked? Zhang Tian used his palm as a blade and slashed out. Azure, black, yellow, gold, white, and other colors of divine-grade great Daoists gathered to form a dazzling blade of light that was 10,000 feet long. He slashed out with his saber, drawing a long light tail in the void. It streaked across the vast void and instantly swept past the 10 black iron battleships like a dream. Before the warriors of the ancient demons realized what was going on, a voice suddenly rang out. Bam, bam, bam. 10 violent explosions resounded through the entire space. 10 black iron warships that were 100 miles long were directly split in half. The terrifying laws of the mortal world raged like a nuclear explosion and instantly filled the entire warships. Many of the black iron starships exploded into multicolored fireballs and melted into molten iron almost as soon as they split open. The crushing of the thick earth, the washing of the black water, the burning of the vermilion bird's flame. All kinds of laws and great Daoists intertwined and tore all the ancient demon warriors in the warships, including the royal clan's 7th demon general, into pieces. Hiss. At this moment, all the warriors of the ancient demon clan sucked in a breath of cold air. Even the royal demon warships that had turned around and were about to follow the Devil's Claws into Saint Origin World suddenly stopped in the void. Between heaven and earth, space-time wind whistled, lightning and black water roared. The laws and great Daoists that Zhang Tian had unleashed were still raging in the sky. They didn't stop for a long time as if they were going to last forever. Countless warriors and generals of the ancient demon clan were stunned. As one of the most famous demon clans in the universe, the strength of an ancient demon worship was comparable to that of a saint at the mid-void return level. In terms of defense, it was even better. Zhang Tian condensed the void, formed a domain, and destroyed 10 warships with one palm. This strength was truly shocking. It was far beyond the strength of an ordinary saint at the void return level. Even veteran saints like Pil Saint Gu He and living fossils like Xia Zhongying might not be able to do this. Interesting. I underestimated you. The devil's claws stared at Zhang Tian with a murderous intent and spoke again. This time it spoke in the human language. All demon generals, listen to my order. Kill this little bug first, then attack Saint Origin World. Yes. Many demon generals responded at the same time. Streams of devil chi that seemed to be able to shake the heavens and earth rose from a huge black iron battleship like rolling black pillars. Chapter 2076. In the end, there were dozens of them. These dozens of demon generals were obviously the most powerful beings of the ancient demon clan. In terms of strength, each of them was comparable to a late-stage void return great sage. Especially the few leading them, their auras were especially powerful. They were even stronger than Xia Zhongying, Gu He, and the other giants of the Saint Origin World. Boom! At this moment, Zhang Tian had already rushed into the ancient demon clan's camp and started a massacre. Swish! At this moment, Zhang Tian didn't use any Dharma treasures or divine powers. Instead, he used his physical strength to kill. He had become a god, and his divine body was even more powerful. He was like a young god who had descended to the mortal world. Every move he made was covered in 5-colored divine light. Every punch he made was the most powerful killing move. Boom! The surging power of a god shook heaven and earth. His punch turned into a colorful rainbow and destroyed 7 or 8 battleships in one go. The rainbow contained divine-grade great Daoists of different natures. It was filled with endless killing intent and destructive power. The Kun Ping pierced through the void, the lightning beast was yang and tough, the green wood chi, the vermilion bird was fire. Each great Dao was supreme and indestructible. When the great Daoists gathered together, there was a chaotic great Dao that could split heaven and earth. The battleships were made of iron, the warriors of the ancient demon clan, and all kinds of defensive arrays on the ships. They were all vulnerable in front of Zhang Tian's fist. Zhang Tian was like a tiger that had rushed into a flock of sheep. He could tear apart countless warriors of the ancient demon clan with every move he made. Ordinary warriors, retreat and get into battle formation. Demon generals, attack. A royal ancient demon ordered in a cold voice. There was a dark demonic mark between his eyebrows. It was covered in evil demonic patterns that were filled with blood, killing, and depravity. The strange patterns made people dizzy. Whoosh! Many black iron battleships retreated like a tide. Demon generals that were 30 to 40 meters tall, with slender figures and clad in bronze armor, flew over from all directions. Their auras were extremely powerful. Each of them was comparable to a late-stage void return great sage. Moreover, there were dozens of them holding Dharma treasures of the ancient demon clan. They sealed off the sky and the ground. Several dozen returned to void stage saints joining forces. It was almost equivalent to the entire Saint Origin continent's Saint Alliance. Moreover, this was the ancient demon clan, and there were even royal clans. Their demonic aura was even more terrifying, so they could completely suppress the Saint Alliance. It could be said that even if Gu He and Xia Zhongying were to face him, they would instantly lose their composure and not dare to fight. Die. However, Zhang Tian did not back down at all. His eyes were indifferent. His hands drew a perfect arc in the air. His 5 fingers rose up in succession as if he was playing a piano. Every single finger flicked out, and a phenomenon of the great Tao flickered within it. The Kun Peng that swept across the heavens, the vermilion bird that was wreathed in flames, the winged dragon that stepped on the thick earth, the azure dragon that swam through the mysterious waters. After the many strange phenomena disappeared one after another, all that was left in Zhang Tian's palm was a misty, chaotic light wheel. Above this light wheel, 9 beams of divine light circulated, growing and multiplying endlessly, eternal and indestructible. It was as if the heavens and earth were born, the primal chaos was opened, and the galaxy was born. 9 elements chaos wheel. Zhang Tian held the light wheel and gave it a gentle push. Boom! A dazzling huge 9-colored light wheel suddenly traversed the void and shot out at an unimaginable speed. A long mark was plowed in the void. The demon generals were the first to bear the brunt. There were 7 or 8 demon generals at the front, but they didn't even have time to say a word before they were crushed into green smoke by the chaotic 9 elemental radiant wheels. The light wheel whistled. It was like a blazing sun across the sky. After crushing the demon generals, it crashed into the fleet of the ancient demons' battleships. Many battleships had just lined up and wanted to form a battle formation of the demons, but they were directly destroyed by the light wheel. A huge passage hundreds of kilometers long appeared in the sky above the critical boundary canyon. Dozens of battleships in the passage were smashed into pieces. The power of one attack was so great. After Zhou Xian cast this Dharma spell, the heavens and the earth were dead silent. Many demon generals also had a look of horror on their faces. Countless warriors of the ancient demons' eyes were also filled with fear. They had hunted down many dimensional creatures in the void, but when had they ever seen an overlord like Zhou Xian? The might of Zhou Xian's every move was already close to the legendary fleshly body sanctification. Even a late-stage void return realm great saint was like a scarecrow in front of him. Whoosh! Zhou Xian slowly lowered his hand. The blood in his body boiled violently like a tsunami of lava. The 9 elements chaos technique was a famous divine power of the Hing-Yu Immortal sect. It was able to dominate the universe and shock the ages. Zhou Xian used this divine power with the power of an early-stage soul formation realm cultivator, and its power was indeed earth-shattering. Even the grand cultivators of the 9 immortal sects would be shocked. This was a demon general of the ancient demon tribe, a return-to-void-stage powerful being. Even living fossils like Xianxia would have to put in a lot of effort to kill a void return realm great saint demon. Zhou Xian killed 7 or 8 of them with one attack and it was effortless. Once this power was announced, it would no longer be a problem to shock the entire divine origin realm. It would be enough to shock half of the central galaxy and even the 9 immortal sects. Of course, Zhou Xian was in the fragment of the demon realm and was surrounded by dimensional storms. Even the grand cultivators of the 9 heavens might not be able to see him. That was why he didn't hide it and used it brazenly. Not enough. Zhou Xian's eyes were cold. Although so many of them had died, it was only a small setback for the ancient demon clan. It did not hurt them at all. Especially the ancient demon royal family who hadn't made a move yet. He had to kill until these hundreds of thousands of demons were terrified and didn't dare to be enemies with Zhou Xian. Only then could Zhou Xian focus on dealing with the demon claws. Again. Zhou Xian clasped his hands together again and flicked his fingers like a wheel. All kinds of phenomena appeared and disappeared. The cycle of reincarnation was endless. The Tao of Chaos. Kill him. We can't let him use his Dharma spells. The many demon generals were all frightened out of their wits, and the leader roared crazily. Dozens of demon generals, all of whom had the power of a void return saint, waved their weapons at the same time and attacked from all directions. Every attack they made shook the world, shattered the dimension and made the canyon tremble. Dozens of demon chi and dharma laws surged and swept across the sky, making the essence chi in a 1,000-mile radius boil. If this attack was successful, everything in a 10,000-mile radius would turn into ashes and it might even penetrate the canyon. Even the top overlords of the divine origin realm would have to retreat in the face of this attack. Even the Saints' Alliance would be in trouble. Even the soul formation cultivators of the 9 immortal sects might not be able to withstand it. Zhou Xian's eyes were still expressionless. Boom! The Xian Wu Gingjin Divine Emperor Kun Peng Thunder Chi, Earth Dragon and many other Dharma phenomena appeared around Zhou Xian and spun at a high speed. In the end they turned into a chaotic light wheel and let out a thunderous sound. Inside Zhou Xian's body, the deity roared and many Dharma energies surged, turning into a monstrous divine force that was infused into Zhou Xian's palm. Boom! The Grand Canyon trembled and the space barrier was torn apart, creating a huge ravine. Chapter 2077. Boom! Thunder dragons suddenly burst out from the space storm, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws as if they wanted to devour Zhou Xian. Thunder tribulation. Zhou Xian's heart sank and he was horrified from the bottom of his heart. He felt uneasy as if he was being stared at by a terrifying existence. Originally, the critical canyon was a space fragment that didn't belong to this world and was isolated by the boundary membrane. Therefore, when Zhang Tian advanced to the soul formation realm, he used the strict boundary membrane to deceive the world and didn't encounter the thunder tribulation. But now the boundary membrane was broken, and the world naturally sensed that Zhang Tian, a new soul formation realm cultivator, was about to descend a tribulation. But even so, Zhang Tian still didn't stop. The path of cultivation followed the laws of heaven and earth, but in the end, it was about seizing the creation of heaven and earth. What's more, soul formation realm cultivators had to be recognized by the great Tao and the laws of heaven and earth. They would be blessed by the heavenly mandate and have endless power. But how could heaven and earth recognize you so easily? How could it not descend a tribulation? Heavenly Father, Mother Earth, and cultivators were like children. When cultivators reached the soul formation realm, they would be blessed by heaven and earth. It was equivalent to heaven and earth being like a parent, giving them a part of their power and authority and treating them like their own son. This thunder tribulation was like a test given by heaven and earth to their children. Among the 8 major realms of cultivation, the lower 4 realms were to cultivate oneself, refinement, foundation, core, and nascent soul, building a good foundation step by step. The upper 4 realms were to cultivate heaven and earth, constantly comprehending the great Tao of the universe, borrowing the power of the universe and transforming the power of heaven and earth into one's own body. When one was at the soul formation realm, they borrowed the power of heaven and earth and enforced justice on behalf of heaven. Heaven and earth naturally wanted to test you. When one was at the void return realm, they condensed their own inner world and simulated heaven and earth. In essence, it was starting from scratch and fighting against heaven. Heaven and earth were more dissatisfied and the tribulation was heavier. When it came to the tribulation, it was like a child who had finally grown up and wanted to jump out of this world and go to other worlds. How could Heavenly Father and Mother Earth, who raised this universe, allow it? Therefore, the last stage of the cultivators was called tribulation. And this tribulation came from the universe itself, heaven and earth's parents. In short, the relationship between the last 4 realms and heaven and earth was a process of following, relying, and using to independence, rebellion, and breaking away. Zhang Tian had lived for 10,000 years and had the deepest understanding of the calamities. He understood. The more karma one had, the stronger the tribulation one would encounter when transcending the tribulation and ascending would be, and the harder it would be to escape. Therefore, bodhisattvas fear the cause while mortals fear the effect. Be it immortals, Buddhas, gods, or humans, they were all fearful of karma. Every tribulation was a farewell to the heavens and earth, a severing of karma. Therefore, the benefit of transcending the tribulation was that he could sever his karma with the world. Thinking of this, Zhang Tian's expression became resolute. He raised his palm as if he was holding the most precious treasure and soared into the sky, directly facing the first earth-shattering attack of the demons. 9 extremes. Primal chaos. Grand annihilation technique. Boom. The primal chaos light wheel was several times larger than before. It was like a divine sun in the sky, shining brightly and illuminating the entire canyon, blocking out all other light. Could even be seen from thousands of miles away. At that moment, the entire spatial fragment seemed to have stopped moving. The only thing left in the eyes of the devils was the chaotic light wheel. Resplendent. The 9 elements chaos technique was a famous, remarkable heavenly skill of the Hingyu immortal sect. The 9 extreme chaos destruction technique was already an immortal art of the 9 heavens, almost as powerful as a divine art of the divine world. It didn't belong to the human world. In the cultivation world, even void return saints of the cultivation world might not be able to cast such an immortal spell. Only Tao reunion perfected immortals might be able to imitate 1 or 2 of it. However, Zhang Tian had already formed a divine body and was born from the nascent soul level. He was like a heavenly god in the divine world, but he could cast it. The divine world, the immortal world, and the human world belonged to different levels of civilization. There was a huge gap between the 3. The difference was as big as an ant and a beast or a beast and a human. Simply put, it was like a 6-year-old child who could say 1 + 1 = 2. However, a 100-year-old monkey might not be able to do it. The 9 extreme chaos destruction technique was cast by Zhang Tian. Although its power was less than 1,000th of that of a Tao reunion perfected immortal, it was still able to shake the sun and the moon and make the world tremble. Boom! At that moment, Zhang Tian turned into a ray of light and rushed into the chaotic light wheel. The chaotic light wheel was 100 feet large, like a rising sun. It was extremely dazzling and its light covered the world, containing the power to separate yin and yang. Under the incredulous gaze of the demons, dozens of fiend qi were easily crushed in front of the light wheel. Then the dimension shattered and the world shook. Like a golden crow flying across the sky, the chaotic sun rolled and crashed into the demon generals. Crack. Almost in the blink of an eye. Nearly half of the demon generals were smashed to smithereens by the resplendent light wheel. Even the demon cores in their bodies were crushed into powder under the pressure of the 9 extreme powers. As for the other demon generals, they were all scared out of their wits. They screamed and ran in all directions, wishing that their parents had given them an extra leg. These void return overlords who had dominated the universe and plundered everywhere, couldn't even withstand a single blow from the light wheel. They were as fragile as paper. So weak. At this moment, Jiang Tian's face was incomparably handsome. Every strand of his jet-black hair was sparkling and translucent like black jade. His skin was as fine and smooth as a woman's, and it was bathed in light. The surging devil qi in the surroundings was not tainted in the slightest. He was incomparably holy, noble, and perfect, just like a god. Boom. After crushing the demon generals, Jiang Tian drove the light wheel and rushed into the battle formation of the ancient demons. Compared to the demon generals, Jiang Tian was more interested in the hundreds of black iron battleships. Although they were weak, they could kill an elephant with many ants. He didn't need too many battleships. As long as he sent 100 battleships to the Divine Origin continent, it would be enough to threaten the safety of the continent. One had to know that his daughter Jiang Beibei and Blackie were still in seclusion on the continent. If a demon flood broke out on the continent, his daughter and Blackie's lives would be in danger. Set up the Heavenly Demon Battle Formation and use the Heavenly Demon Divine Power. The royal mighty figures who were in charge of the battle formation all had cold expressions as they shouted in unison. Their emotions were even somewhat flustered and exasperated. They had plundered tens of thousands of planets and had been everywhere except the central galaxy. However, they had never seen an opponent as terrifying as Jiang Tian. More importantly, this person seemed to be only a soul formation cultivator. Suddenly, fiend qi and endless fiend laws and great Dao surged out of every battleship and gathered in the sky, forming a peerless heavenly demon that was tens of thousands of feet tall. This heavenly demon was formed completely by laws and great Dao. It was extremely sturdy and almost indestructible. It had 2 wings on its back and 2 horns on its head. Bone spikes protruded from its back and its eyes were as red as blood. It had 8 arms and each arm was holding a peerless fiend weapon. In front of it, the Kuan Peng's avatar and the chaotic light wheel were insignificant, like children's toys at the foot of a mountain. Chapter 2078. Buzz. Jiang Tian didn't retreat at all. Instead, he flew up with the chaotic light wheel. The winged heavenly demon formed by the formation wielded a demonic spear and attacked with the combined power of dozens of void return fiend saints, hundreds of soul formation cultivators and hundreds of thousands of nascent soul and golden core cultivators. How terrifying was that power? Between the heavens and the earth, a gigantic fissure that was over 1,000,000 feet long was pulled out. From the outside, the critical Grand Canyon looked like a smooth egg with cracks on the eggshell. All the demonic qi and demonic dharma laws within tens of thousands of miles were gathered by that attack. Before the terrifying power had even arrived, the ground had already collapsed, sinking hundreds of meters deep. Terrifying cracks spread all over the ground. It was as if the dimension was about to collapse. The power of that attack was comparable to that of a void return pinnacle stage cultivator. Even Qianmo and the others couldn't fight back against that attack. The Eastern Empire could even sink into the ground with one attack. Mountains and rivers would shatter and heaven and earth would collapse. The heavenly demons of the ancient demons were said to be comparable to Dao reunion perfected immortals. They could look down on the sun and the moon, travel across the universe and live forever. Although they were only simulated by the formation, they were indeed at the pinnacle of the void return pinnacle stage and were comparable to Dao reunion perfected immortals. Boom! Jiang Tian's eyes were filled with indifference as he faced this terrifying attack that caused the critical Grand Canyon to tremble. He had never been so calm before. This might be the most dangerous moment Jiang Tian had ever faced since he was reborn, but Jiang Tian didn't panic at all. Buzz buzz buzz. 9 divine-grade great Daoists and 9 avatars spun faster and faster. In the end, they almost merged into one and turned into a sun. Outside the critical Grand Canyon, The thunder tribulation that covered an area of 1,000 miles broke through the dimensional storm and gathered. Lightning clouds flashed and pressed down. The cracks in the dimension were getting bigger and bigger. Although the dimensional storm was blocking them, the Heavenly Father and Earthly Mother could sense that a soul formation cultivator was about to descend. The cracks in the dimension are getting bigger and bigger. If we fight again, the one above the 9 heavens might sense it. Should we fight again? Fight. The players control the chess pieces, but they will never abandon the chess pieces and let them be eaten. Since he didn't kill me immediately, I have a chance to jump out of the chessboard. This thought flashed through Zhou Xian's mind in an instant, but his face remained resolute and he didn't back down. He raised his head and looked at the double-winged heavenly demon in the void. He slowly raised his hand and stuck out his thumb, clenching his palm into a fist. Divine splendor that resembled green jade and colored glass shone in his fists. He punched out one last time with an indomitable will. In my life I, Kong Teichu, will only move forward and never retreat. Along with a loud shout, the god in Zhou Xian's body burned to the extreme and was on the verge of breaking apart. The chaotic light wheel expanded several times and turned into a blazing sun, like the chariot of the sun god. It crushed through the void and crashed into the attack of hundreds of thousands of ancient demons. Boom! A light that was bigger than the explosion of 10,000 nuclear bombs and brighter than the expansion of 1,000 suns burst out in an instant. At that moment, the critical Grand Canyon within a radius of hundreds of thousands of kilometers was illuminated with incomparable brightness. Even though they were tens of millions of kilometers away from the Divine Origin continent, the cultivators and mortals of the Divine Origin continent could still see it with their naked eyes. They even closed their eyes tightly and tears flowed down their cheeks when they saw the incandescent light. The dazzling light pierced through the spatial fragments of the critical Grand Canyon and shot into the spatial storm. At that moment, countless spatial beings raised their heads and stared at the light in shock, their hearts trembling. They had seen this kind of dazzling divine splendor before. It was the power of a battle between void-returned saints. It tore the spatial river apart, caused the earth to sink, mountains to collapse, lakes to overturn, and even cracked a small plain. Now this kind of light lit up again. Crack. Under the shocked gazes of countless ancient demons and the incredulous gazes of many demon generals, the double-winged heavenly demon's halberd broke in the middle. The chaotic light wheel was like a violently rotating cutting machine, instantly slicing the halberd in half and shattering several of its arms. Then the chaotic light wheel rotated and penetrated into the body of the heavenly demon, which was formed entirely from demonic laws and the great Tao. Although it was incomparable to the indomitable true demon heaven, the chaotic light wheel was so small that it was not even worth mentioning. However, at this moment, it was invincible and unstoppable, like a bullet piercing through a water tank. Whoosh! The chaotic light wheel drew a long scar in the void that was dozens of kilometers long. It directly sliced the true demon heaven form into pieces. The combined attack of hundreds of thousands of ancient demon tribe powerful beings and return to void stage holy demons was unable to stop Zhou Xian. It was directly destroyed by Zhou Xian's chaotic light wheel. Finally, the chaotic light wheel rushed into the demon battle formation. Boom! The body of the heavenly demon god exploded, turning into fragments of demonic laws and great Tao. Billowing demonic chi scattered in all directions. At that moment, hundreds of thousands of ancient demons vomited blood and trembled. Tens of thousands of ancient demons were hit by the backlash and exploded on the spot. Although the battle formation was powerful, once it was broken there would be a violent backlash. At this moment, Zhou Xian had already rushed into hundreds of ancient demon battleships. At this moment he was like a fierce tiger in a flock of sheep. Boom boom boom. Almost in the blink of an eye, the battleships exploded one after another like fireworks. Zhou Xian's hair fluttered in the wind, carrying a hint of wildness in his elegance. He moved boldly, unrivaled. A punch or a kick could easily shatter several battleships. In fact, it could even break a 100-mile-long black iron demonic warship into two halves. The tough dark fiend iron, the talismans carved with fiend blood and the inlaid fiend stones were all as fragile as paper. At this moment, the power of the gods was roaring in Zhou Xian's body. His power, dharma laws and great Tao were climbing up almost endlessly. He was like a nouveau riche who had endless money and was desperately squandering it. Stop him. Go. Many of the demon generals were enraged. Hundreds of pure-blooded ancient demons flew out of the battleships and used their divine powers to charge at Zhang Tian, trying to stop Zhang Tian. But Zhang Tian punched with every step. The chaotic light wheel shone behind him and Zhang Tian pushed the eternal universe divine fist to the extreme. A terrifying golden light flashed across the sky, annihilating the dimension and messing up time. 8 battleships were destroyed with every punch. Even Void Return fiends couldn't withstand his attack. Bathed in the chaotic light, Zhang Tian reached out and crushed 2 demon generals with his bare hands. Then he reached out his hands and grabbed a royal demon commander. This royal demon commander, who was 10 meters tall and wearing silver armor, had been commanding and had never attacked. He was more powerful than Xianxia, but now he couldn't help but fly over. Crack! Zhang Tian grabbed the wings of the royal demon commander with both hands and tore it in the air, tearing it in half. Accompanied by the screams of the royal demon commander, countless fiend blood splattered in the air. After killing the fiend demon commander, Zhang Tian threw away the fiend wings and then hugged his body and crashed into the battleships that were trying to escape. Bang! 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 In just a few seconds, another 50 battleships were destroyed by Zhang Tian with his bare hands. Tens of thousands of ancient demons were reduced to ashes. Zhang Tian was so excited that he was bathed in blood. He directly pulled out a refined treasured sword. The Tao fluctuated and Dharma laws surged. This sword was made by him by turning the mortal world into a divine weapon. Chapter 2079. Boom! The sacred weapon, which was powered by 9 divine-grade great Daoists, turned into a heavenly river that was tens of thousands of feet long. The sword chi was dense, the light was cold for 100,000 li and frost covered the critical canyon. Zhang Tian swung his sword and destroyed 7 demon generals and 32 ancient demon battleships. He's too powerful. We can't stop him at all. How can there be such a person in the world? Countless demon generals felt their limbs go cold as they shivered. They were surrounded by endless fear, trembling uneasily. The expressions of the silver-armored royal demon commanders and demon generals were also extremely grave. The strength that Zhang Tian had shown was comparable to the hall masters and elders of the 9 celestial sects. He would be a demon commander among the ancient demons. Every single one of those figures was an exalted existence that controlled a stellar region and looked down upon an entire world. They weren't existences that could be defeated by numbers. Retreat. Retreat now. Several superior-rank demon generals quickly made a decision. But how could Zhang Tian let them escape? Zhang Tian joined together in the air, becoming one with his sword. The sacred weapon turned into a ray of black light and flew in the sky. Its speed was 100 times or even 1,000 times faster than the speed of sound. Many ancient demon warriors didn't even have time to see the sword aura before their heads were cut in half. If one looked down from the sky, they would find out. Among the countless battleships of the ancient demon race, a black sword light swept back and forth like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. It was so sharp that the ancient demon race's blood flowed like a river. Many demon generals cried and howled, and the great canyon was dyed red with blood. No one could stop Zhang Tian's sword. Boom! Gods and demons were different. The laws of Dharma shook and the great Daoists of the 2 worlds clashed. Another huge crack actually appeared on the tight boundary membrane. The crack disappeared in an instant. However, 3 figures, 2 big and 1 small, had already entered the space in the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint. They were the leader of the Saint Origin world, Alchemy Saint Gu He, the old man who looked like a beggar, and his granddaughter. This kid's strength is actually so strong? The moment Gu He entered, he saw this shocking scene. He couldn't help but be dumbstruck with disbelief. In the sky, the invincible and resplendent sword light gave him a feeling of unstoppable sharpness. How can he be so strong? Since when did such a peerless expert appear in the Saint Origin world? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Gu He's heart trembled and the corners of his eyes twitched. As the current hall master of the number 1 sacred land, the ancient medicine hall, the name of the pill saint had spread throughout the entire continent. As the alliance master of the Sage Alliance, how could his aptitude and strength be lacking? When he was young, he had an extraordinary constitution and talent. Back then he had condensed a sacred-grade golden elixir. When he became a god, he also condensed a sacred-grade god. He was the number 1 genius of the continent in the era after Xianxia. However, when he broke through to the return to void stage and formed his inner world, the grade of his inner world dropped. Although it still surpassed the 9th grade, it was a pity that it didn't reach the saint grade. Of course, to be able to reach beyond the 9th grade was still very rare. From the golden elixir to the nascent soul to the god to the inner world, a cultivator's origin would always drop along the way. For example, even if one had a sacred grade golden elixir, the chances of cultivating a sacred grade nascent soul would still be very slim. There might not even be 1 in 100. From the nascent soul to the god to the inner world, the logic was the same. The probability was extremely low. This also meant that even if a cultivator's constitution was extraordinary and he was lucky enough to cultivate a sacred grade golden elixir, it was still very rare for him to cultivate a sacred grade illusory sky, which was also known as the inner world. In the saint origin world, most of the saints' illusory sky were only of the mortal grade. They were all within the 9th grade. There was no one in the saint origin world who had reached the transcendent grade. It had been 10,000 years since anyone had reached the transcendent grade. Therefore, Guhi still had the right to be arrogant. He still had the capital to dominate the continent and look down on the world. However, when he faced Zhang Tian's sword, it was the first time he felt a sense of inferiority. He was only a spirit-severing realm cultivator, but he had fought for 30,000 miles and fought against millions of soldiers with his sword. He could tell at a glance that Zhang Tian's grade was definitely higher than his. It was definitely higher than the sacred grade spirit-severing realm cultivator. Could it be the immortal grade? When he thought of this, Guhi was completely shocked. He was completely dumbfounded and could not believe it. An immortal grade spirit-severing realm cultivator had not appeared in the saint origin world for 100,000 years. Guhi subconsciously looked at the beggar-like old man beside him. He saw that the old man's eyes were also filled with joy. He exclaimed in amazement, "The heavens did not lie. The heavenly oracle didn't deceive me. There really is a genius here. No, it should be a celestial talent. We have finally found a celestial talent." A celestial talent? Since Senior said so, this person has the potential to become a celestial talent. He is indeed an immortal grade spirit-severing realm cultivator. When Guhi saw this, he no longer had any doubts. He was so shocked that his body trembled. He looked at the sky with envy and reverence. He looked at the back of Zhang Tian, who was like a celestial talent descending to the mortal world. He had no doubts about the old man's words. Because the old man's background was too great and his strength was too strong. He was a saint of the void returning realm from the continent of the 9 clouds. His name was Xianxia, a true peerless cultivator. The continent of the 9 clouds was a 5-star continent. There were countless cultivation planets and galaxies. It was more than 100 times bigger than the saint origin world. The most important thing was that the continent of the 9 clouds was a vassal continent of the 9 great celestial sects. There were countless geniuses and saints there. However, in such a powerful continent of the 9 clouds, Xianxia was a peerless cultivator. Although he was an independent cultivator, he had single-handedly destroyed 13 holy lands and holy sects. Moreover, he was also one of the 3 envoys of the 9 great celestial sects. He was qualified to travel the star ocean in search of talents and recommend them to the celestial sects. That was too terrifying. In terms of cultivation, although Guhi was also a saint of the void returning realm, he was not as good as Xianxia. Xianxia was an extremely rare saint of the void returning realm. He had cultivated a saint of the void sky, and his strength was comparable to a Tao reunion perfected immortal. A saint of the void returning realm was extremely powerful. Their souls were placed in the void and their words were the law of the world. They could replace the laws and great Daoists of their inner world with those of the outer world. They were enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. However, ordinary saints still needed to be on their own home ground to achieve this step. In other words, they could only do that in the void world where they had comprehended the laws and great Daoists. Many saints of the void returning realm would have their strength greatly reduced after leaving their homeland, home planet, or galaxy. However, that was not the case for saint of the void returning realm. The great Daoists they comprehended were of a higher level. They were closer to the great Tao of truth and the great Tao of heaven. They were more universal. Wherever they went, they could instantly place their consciousness in the void and replace the laws of the world. No matter where they were, they could mobilize the power of the world and draw the power of the laws and great Daoists. If Gu He were to fight against him, Tai Xuanzi could instantly suppress his inner world, take over the nest and become the master of this world. Killing Gu He would be as easy as killing a chicken. Grandpa, I thought you came here to find an opportunity to become an immortal such as the six-path lotus tree. I didn't expect it to be him. At the side, the little girl in purple clothes said in a childish voice. He's a seed to become an immortal. I hope I didn't misjudge him. I hope he won't disappoint me. Tai Xianzi clasped his hands behind his back and looked at Jiang Tian in the sky with a hopeful expression. He was looking forward to his exciting performance. Bam! Soon, Jiang Tian passed through the demon's battle formation and rushed to the royal family's main battleship. His black hair was crystal clear and his black eyes were shining. His long robe fluttered in the wind and he was extremely handsome. With a saint weapon in his hand, he came bathed in blood like a god. Behind Jiang Tian, the sky was filled with broken limbs and worship remains. It was an extremely tragic scene. More than half of the hundreds of thousands of ancient demons and hundreds of battleships had been killed by him alone. At this moment, there was dead silence in the critical juncture canyon. The sky was stained with blood, and the demonic land was dyed red. The demons were shocked and dumbfounded. Chapter 2080. Whoosh! The wind howled and the chaotic chi flowed. The entire critical juncture canyon was like a tattered cloak at the moment. Jiang Tian and the ancient demon race had poked holes in the barrier one after another. In the sky, countless ancient demons were killed until their blood flowed like a river. Their corpses were strewn all over the place. Only the royal battleship remained. At this moment, Jiang Tian stood alone in front of the bronze warship that was several dozen kilometers long. His eyes were cold like an ancient stone elephant that would never change. He quietly looked at the savage and ferocious ancient warship. Behind it was the fiend's claw. Jiang Tian tore apart the iron barrier and faced the fiend's claw. It was known as the number 1 filth and number 1 evil. In the demon realm, it could be regarded as a holy object. He's too powerful. He's too powerful. He's like a god. Many of the remaining ancient demons felt chills run down their spines as their hearts sank into an abyss. Hundreds of battleships, hundreds of thousands of nascent soul ancient demons, dozens of soul formation and void return fiend generals and 5 pure royal demon commanders in silver armor. They couldn't withstand Jiang Tian's attack and he rushed to the front of the battleship. There was only one thought in the minds of the ancient demons. Tens of thousands of soldiers. Legend has it that some human elites in the 9 celestial sects can destroy an entire race. I didn't believe it at first, but I finally believe it after seeing him. What kind of demon did we offend? The last remaining silver-armored demon commander's hands trembled. It was already an overlord among the ancient demons. It was one of the top figures even in the divine origin continent. Could suppress an entire galaxy. But it couldn't even withstand one attack from Jiang Tian. The demon commander in silver armor saw it with its own eyes. His 4 companions were sliced apart by Jiang Tian like vegetables. Their demon cores shattered and their demon bodies shattered, instantly dying. Now we can only count on the fiend's claw. The demon commander in silver armor ran back to the battleship and looked back at the giant fiend's claw. Not only in the eyes of the ancient demons but also in the eyes of all demons, the devil's claws were like a sacred object. In the primordial age, the emperor of the 9 underworld's demons was severely injured by Daoist Venerable. He fled back to the 9 underworlds, and before he passed away he issued the 7 great devil curses, cursing all living beings and polluting all things. Later his body disappeared, leaving only a claw behind. To a certain extent, the devil's claws were the incarnation of the demon emperor. Anyone who obtained this claw would be possessed by the demonic emperor, achieving a peerless divine ability. It was said that in the long history, the devil's claws had been revived several times. They were either connected to the cultivators or occupied the cultivators' bodies. Several powerful evil spirits rose because of it. Once any human, demon or demon combined with the devil's claws, they would have the power to destroy all living things and bring chaos to the universe. To be able to wrestle with the 9 great immortal sects. Throughout the ages, the 9 great celestial sects had tried to destroy the devil's claws several times, but none of them succeeded. No matter what kind of enemy it was, the invincible devil's claws could crush them. Not only this silver-armored demon general. In the end, the remaining 100,000 ancient demons and 7 or 8 ancient demon generals were in despair. They did not dare to face Zhang Tian directly and pinned their hopes on the Devil's Claws. They all turned to look at him. At this moment, the Devil's Claws had gathered the hope of the entire ancient demon clan. Swish! Under the gazes of countless people. In a dead silence, one of the tentacles of the Devil's Claws waved gently. Boom! When the tentacle transformed by the demonized immortal root waved, an unimaginably terrifying wave instantly filled the entire space, causing the critical canyon to tremble. The mountains shook and the earth quaked. Within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles, almost all the demonic beasts and demons were trembling in their hearts. They knelt on the ground, their hearts trembling. And 100,000 ancient demons knelt down in the air, worshipping the Devil's Claws and shouting fanatically, "Greetings to the Demon Emperor of the 9 underworlds." Is the Devil's Claws finally going to make a move? A tentacle with a gentle wave is already so powerful. And there are more than 810,000 tentacles like this. I wonder if this fellow cultivator is a match for it? Guhi frowned slightly. Throughout the ages, the Devil's Claws had destroyed countless star regions and billions of lives. The strength was too powerful. Countless Void Return saints had died in its hands, including many Dao Reunion perfected immortals. You've killed so many of my descendants. You've successfully angered me. The Devil's Claws spoke. In other words, it was the Demon King of the 9 underworlds at this moment. As soon as it spoke, demonic chi surged and everything within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles began to tremble. Countless demonic lands cracked, demonic mountains collapsed, and array inscriptions exploded one after another. It was entrenched there, and each of its tentacles was as powerful as a demonic dragon. The space seemed to be unable to bear its weight and shattered, revealing a huge black hole. Countless storms were howling inside. Little worm of the human race, you're very powerful. You've killed so many of my descendants. Your bloodline has been nourished by the 6 paths lotus tree and has become even more powerful. I'll occupy your body and make you my puppet. Together we'll become the new demon king of the divine origin world and even the 9 major immortal sects under our feet. The Devil's Claws said coldly. It spoke the most ancient and obscure demon language. Every word set off gusts of 9 underworlds, cold wind between heaven and earth, chilling people to the bone. All kinds of demonic phenomena appeared, making people shudder. Is that so? I want to use your curse and bloodline to create a demonic clone of mine. Zhang Tian smiled faintly. The demon king of the 9 underworlds was a demon born from the heavens and earth. It was the culmination of the evil thoughts of heaven and earth. Back then it was qualified to be attacked by people like the Buddha and the Tao Master. Now its blood essence, origin, curse, and evil thoughts were kept in the hand of its remains. Once it was controlled and refined by Zhang Tian, it could even help Zhang Tian form another demon god. Not only would he be able to do whatever he wanted in the world of cultivation, but he would also be able to do whatever he wanted in the demon world. You're courting death. The Devil's Claws' eyes were cold. Just when the 2 sides were about to fight, Tai Xuanzi looked a little nervous and said through his divine sense, "Fellow cultivator, I'm Tai Xuanzi of the 9 clouds. Finally we meet." In fact, Zhang Tian had already noticed the arrival of Tai Xuanzi, but in the fierce battle he couldn't be distracted. However, at this moment when Tai Xuanzi talked to him for the first time, Zhang Tian couldn't help but feel a little excited. Tai Xuanzi was one of Zhang Tian's best friends in the 9 clouds of his previous life. He was originally just a woodcutter born in a humble family. However, he dared to fight against the heavens and rose up in anger. He cultivated from immortal to the heavenly tribulation and successfully entered the celestial world. He also became a celestial emperor. In Zhang Tian's previous life he had created the 13 Taishan swords with him. It was also the main swordsmanship of Tang Linglong. In his previous life Tai Xuanzi gave Zhang Tian a lot of support and help. For example, he had discussed with Tai Xuanzi many times about the understanding of turning into immortal, and he benefited a lot. Zhang Tian restrained his emotions and said indifferently, "What advice do you have for me, senior?" Tai Xuanzi flew over and stood side by side with Zhang Tian. "The Devil's Claws are too evil. You follow me out of the space fragment of the Devil's world. We will gather our forces and stop them. The old man promises that soon, we won't let the creatures of the Saint Origin world be harmed by the Devil's clan. The old man has a secret treasure, the fixed star compass, which can locate the stars of the continent and protect us through the space storm. Yes. Jiang Tian smiled indifferently and said, "Thank you for your kindness, senior, but I am confident that I can subdue the devil's claws." Even Gu He was stunned and couldn't believe it. How could this guy be so ungrateful? Chapter 2081. If it was any other occasion, Gu He would definitely admire Jiang Tian's bravery. They might even publicize it with great fanfare. After all, facing the invasion of the demon race, daring to draw his sword and defend the world of Saint Origin, this was the role model of a cultivator. But now he didn't even spit out blood. You have the ability to subdue the devil's claws? This wasn't the bravery and fearlessness of a cultivator, this was courting death. The demonic emperor of the netherworld was a terrifying existence worthy of the immortal world's Buddha and Tao masters. Even if the devil's claws only retained 1/10 of his strength, it was still extremely terrifying. Otherwise, how could the six paths lotus tree that the ancient sages used to suppress him be corrupted and demonized and become a part of his demonic body? Otherwise, how could the 9 immortal sects have tried to suppress and crush the devil's claws for so long without success? Fellow cultivator, don't be rash. Tai Xuanzi advised earnestly with a panicked expression. Jiang Tian was extremely talented and had an excellent foundation. Given 100 years of effort, he would definitely become a mighty figure of the return to void stage, or even a Tao reunion perfected immortal. At that time, if he were to face the devil's claws again, his chances of winning would be very high and he would at least have the ability to protect himself. But now, the demonic emperor's cultivation base back then was on par with the giants of the immortal world. Now even 1/100th of his strength was extremely terrifying and could compete with a tribulation celestial lord. It's just an octopus, it's not worth mentioning. However, Jiang Tian's handsome face was emotionless. With a cold snort, he approached the mountain-like devil's claws with his sword. His posture was very casual and relaxed, as if he was taking a stroll, brimming with great confidence. Tai Xuanzi staggered and almost fell from the sky. It's just an octopus? It's not worth mentioning. To be honest, it would be very difficult for 3 Tai Xuanzi to destroy the devil's claws. The strength of the devil's claws was several times more terrifying than the million-strong army of ancient demons. To put it bluntly, these ancient demons, demon generals and royal families. At this moment they were like parasites on his body being nourished by him, that's why they were so powerful. The key was that the devil's claws were the most filthy. Your laws and Tao would be disintegrated and even assimilated. However, Jiang Tian actually dared to say such a thing. Even if he was a celestial genius, it was still not enough. Fellow Daoist, if we don't retreat now, it will be too late. Seeing that Jiang Tian was getting closer and closer to the devil's claws, Tai Xuanzi was a little anxious. If they were further away from the devil's claws, he was confident that he could escape with the 3 of them. But now, you're courting death. The devil's claws were completely enraged. A tentacle that looked like a poisonous dragon grabbed at the void. Plang. A long sword that was shrouded in dark light appeared in the tentacles of the devil's claws. This demonic sword was incomparably long and narrow. It was about 10 feet long and countless patterns were engraved on it. They were very similar to the strange patterns on its face, and they were filled with evil, bloodthirsty and monstrous hatred. This was a divine weapon of the demon race. Countless tentacles were dancing, and a terrifying aura was brewing on the devil's claws, rising steadily, surging and vast to the extreme. It quickly surpassed the height of the silver-armored demon general in Gu He, reaching a realm that was almost unimaginable to everyone. The demons looked up, and the devil's claws stood there like an indomitable evil monster that could suppress the 9 great celestial sects, break the firmament and pierce a hole in the 9 heavens' immortal world. Although this was just an illusion, it still showed the terrifying strength of the devil's claws. Human bug, you are indeed strong enough to fight with me. The devil's claws sneered and spoke the language of the Saint Origin world awkwardly. But how long can the deity in your body last? A quarter of an hour? Half an hour? You broke through in this space fragment. This space fragment belongs to the demon realm. The consciousness of the outside world cannot perceive and penetrate it. You covered yourself and deceived the heavens and earth. Your deity did not go through the tribulation. At this time, this space fragment is full of loopholes and is about to break. If you burn your deity, the heavens and earth will perceive it and send down the thunder tribulation. When the thunder tribulation comes down, you will not be able to resist it. What can you use to stop me? The Devil Emperor was born in the beginning of the universe and his lifespan was immeasurably long. How experienced was he? How unique was his insight? He had long seen through Zhang Tian's outwardly strong but inwardly weak character. Zhang Tian had just burst out such terrifying strength, and even broke the attack of hundreds of semi-god realm warriors, fought against many demon commanders and even the heavenly demon battle formation. In the final analysis, it was the burning of the deity. But the deity that had not gone through the thunder tribulation was not pure enough. Once it started burning, there was no turning back. Either take advantage of the situation to go through the tribulation, or burn it out and all the hard work of a lifetime would be gone. It was like an engine made of unqualified materials. If you forced it to start, it would definitely explode. You could only recondense it again. Even if you were a celestial deity, you could not break this iron law. Without going through the thunder tribulation, you were not a real deity. In just a short while, Zhang Tian had almost burned the deity to the point of cracking. At this time, if he faced the devil's claws again, he might really burn the deity into ashes and exhaust its origin. What? He hasn't gone through the thunder tribulation? Hearing this, Tai Xuanzi was dumbfounded and looked at Gu He in disbelief. Gu He looked silly. I don't know either. Oh, this old man felt that when I came in, there were a lot of heavenly thunders like the thunder tribulation. I didn't expect it to be true. Oh my God. If you haven't gone through the thunder tribulation, you should just run away. Why are you still here? For a moment, Tai Xuanzi was so depressed that he kept stomping his feet. He was in a dilemma. He could neither run away nor fight. The current Zhang Tian was a complete burden. But he was also a rare genius and he had excellent character. He really did not want to see Zhang Tian die. It's enough to kill you. Zhang Tian looked calm without joy or sorrow. Playing. Zhang Tian stood with his sword, his face as cold as iron and his voice as cold as ice. Come up and die. Boom. The battle that would decide the life and death of the demons in the critical canyon finally began. Almost as soon as the two moved, they tore the space apart and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Whether it was the devil's claws or Zhang Tian, they could shatter the void long ago. Their bodies were extremely strong and they could go against the space storm. Tearing the vacuum was as easy as eating and drinking for them. Playing. Zhang Tian's holy weapon collided with the demon sword in the tentacle of the devil's claws, and suddenly it stirred up a terrifying wave. The space was shattered by the two forces in the first moment. Then an even more terrifying wave of law swept through the critical canyon like a tsunami. The demon mountains and strange peaks within a radius of 100,000 miles were turned into dust under this blow. Screams filled the air as blood rained down from the sky. Countless weaker ancient demon warriors and demonic beasts were crushed by this sound. It's too terrifying. If Gu He had not taken a few elixirs in advance, had a life-saving secret treasure, and was protected by Tai Xuanzi's magic power, he would have been torn apart by the wave of the Great Path in the first moment. But even so, he still took Tai Xuanzi's granddaughter and fled as fast as he could. As for the ancient demons and demonic beasts, they wished their parents had given them 2 more legs and fled frantically.